All right. Good evening. It's now 5:30. I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and on channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter this meeting room. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks will be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. Our minute taker is participating remotely, so you may hear from her time to time to turn on the microphone or speak up a little bit so she can get all these minutes correct. We have everybody present, quorum, and we have a sort of a bifurcated agenda. We got regular agenda business items, and then we'll continue review of the CIP program. The first item is Keene Pride. Welcome.
Hello, how are you? I'm Adam Topfer from Keene. I've never done this before, so help me out a little bit.
So
Yeah.
we'll get a quick overview from you as to what your project is, and ultimately we understand what you're looking for is some approvals or some inclusions in city funding. So
Yes.
this will be, our action tonight will be two-part. We'll take all your information and then we'll deal with it under the regular budget session. So thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us. So yeah, my name is Adam Topfer. I'm a resident here in Keene, board president of Keene Pride. We are now in our third year after two really amazingly successful years with our Pride Week and Festival that we do in September. We've done one in 2022, 2023, and now for 2024. And we are seeking community event status for that.
This is more just curious for me because I know this will go through PLD for all the fun of that part, but similar to last year for this year?
Yeah, the plan is, it's very similar. Central Square, Roxbury Street, I think we've figured out a way to make it really work pretty well for what we need. Maybe in 2025, depending upon what's going on with downtown and Central Square, we might have to expand it a little bit because in terms of vendors, we had well over 100 last year, and it's getting a little cramped right in Central Square. But this year we're planning on doing the same footprint.
Awesome.
Same
Thank you.
times, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's more PLD. I just am curious.
Yeah.
So.
Other members here? Comments from the public?
Did you want to say? No? Okay, sure.
You've been elected, he's gonna leave you up there. Okay, so, this committee is going to accept it as informational, and we'll get you on the agenda when we're building the budget that has that section of the budget to deal with downtown community events.
Okay.
And, probably like to see you again during that period of time, but we'll let you know exactly
Okay.
when it's happening, and, we'll go from there.
Okay, great. Anything else you need from me tonight?
You guys, all set? No?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Motion?
Yeah, I just want to say the fact that it continues to grow is a testament to the fact that you've put in the work needed and found the support, and people are loving it. So, all right. Move to place the request from Keene Pride for community event funding for their 2025 Pride event on more time to be further discussed during fiscal year 2025 budget deliberations.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed, it's unanimous. Okay, the second item, the Energy Expo event. Who's? There he is.
You mean, I didn't hear you. Was this the ECC? Okay. So Zach Luce, 317 Court Street in Keene. I'm the chair of the Energy and Climate Committee. The Monadnock Sustainability Hub has approached us about working with them to organize an energy expo similar to one they did in Peterborough last year. And they're considering the airport as a potential location or possibly another city property. As a committee, we've agreed to support them with volunteer efforts, but they are looking for additional support from the city that might possibly waive some of the fees for using the airport. I think there's also some, it makes it a little easier for them to get FAA approval to use the airport for this purpose if the city is supporting it as well. I think there was something in the minutes about waiving permit fees. I think that was an error. I don't think they're expecting that. They're really just looking for support from the city behind the event to help make it more successful, just from a reputation for the event and marketing purposes, and the use of city property for the event.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee?
Yeah, it does, the proposed motion does say permit fees, but it should say facility fees.
Anybody from the public before we talk a little more? All right, so we've got a motion that will kind of move it along, and you'll be having some discussions with staff, coordination, and if we have to come back again, we'll be here with you.
Great.
Great program coming along the line.
Thank you.
Motion.
Move to recommend the city manager be authorized to work with the Energy and Climate Committee with respect to the potential waiver of any facility fees and to authorize access to city facilities in support of the 2024 Energy Expo event to be scheduled in the fall of 2024.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? No one opposed, unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Airport Director.
Good evening. Dave Hickling, Airport Director. What we have here is a grant that we expect to be getting here in the next couple of weeks. This is for a project we've been trying to get done for quite a long time. We actually bid this project, applied for a grant, received a grant, but by the time we received the grant, the timing for the bid had expired, so the contractor executed or took advantage of his opportunity to withdraw his bid because the prices of asphalt and everything had increased by the time we got that grant. So what we did is we rebid that project, got the bid in. The AIP grants are based on bids, so we have to have a bid to apply for the grant. And now we look like we're getting a grant to be able to try to do that project again. It has been quite some time since we applied for this grant, but the last time we talked to the contractor, they are still willing to hold their prices. So looks like we can move forward with this. So we would, I would like to make one amendment to this. From the recommendations on the second line, after accept and execute, I'd like to add and expend to that language for the recommendation. So again, this is a AIP funded project. The FAA paid 90% of it. The state would pay 5%, and we're responsible for 5% of the cost of the project. And this is for the reconstruction of Taxiway Alpha.
Tom, is that okay, just writing it in? Yeah. Okay.
Insert it right in there.
All right, discussion up here. Members of the public? In that case, Motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept, execute, and expend a grant for up to the amount of $2,767,767 from the Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none. All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Marlborough Street, huh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucia, City Engineer. I'm going to move right past the implied sarcasm in your tone, but, so thank you for indulging me. Tonight, I'm asking for permission to execute a relatively small $20,000, up to $20,000 change order with the design consultant. This is to redesign a portion of the project that runs through the Public Works facility, the complex. Earlier in the design process, at the very beginning, we looked at a couple of options for routing that trail between Marlborough Street and the rail trail through the Public Works facility. One of the options was to wrap it sort of around the Fleet Services building, and the other options looked at routing it through the parking lot, essentially, in different ways. And initially, the thought was, well, let's keep it as far away from the Public Works traffic as possible, and that's the design that our consultants moved forward with initially. As we've gotten through the design process and gotten more into it and sort of deeper into the analysis, a number of disadvantages of that routing have really come to light. By routing it that way, we have property impacts on the adjacent HCS facility, so we're going to have to negotiate property acquisitions with them. There's wetlands impacts. That the routing of the trail around the fleet, I didn't at least realize it at the time, but put it in close proximity to the exhaust vents from the welding hood at Fleet Services. So that's, obviously a little bit of a concern. Probably the biggest factor, though, is that the cost of routing it that way was actually going to be more because of right now there is an existing ramp that runs from the base of the railroad embankment up to the railroad. And people use it, pretty much every day as it is. We were going to have to sort of regrade that to run the slope in the other direction. So by revising that alignment, we're going to actually end up saving money. We'll be using a section of sidewalk that runs alongside our parking lot, making it a little bit wider, but using that existing concrete, so that saves us quite a bit of construction. So even though this is a change order and additional cost for the design phase, we think in the end this is going to end up saving us a good bit of money. And we don't think it's going to have a significant impact on the timeline because we were going to have to negotiate right of way, and that's very time consuming, obviously. So we think it's schedule neutral, and we don't think that this is going to jeopardize the construction this season. So,
Thank you. Questions here?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Don, is this still going to go down the right-of-way by the butterfly park?
yeah, it'll still be adjacent to the butterfly park. Before it gets to right at the end of the butterfly park, it'll stop and it'll take a hard right. It'll cross Bartholomew Court, and then we'll be building a new section of wide sidewalk from the southeast side of Bartholomew Court, connecting to the sidewalks that exist that run down to the ice rink. And then from there, it'll cross over and run alongside the Public Works parking lot.
So are we going to keep it on the existing right-of-way, or are we going to take part of it and turn it into a trail?
It'll be on the existing right-of-way until it leaves Bartholomew Court, kind of down around the corner.
Right, okay.
But then it will be still the intention to lay it out as a Class A trail as part of that construction process.
Right, but that was my question. Class A trail right on the road by the park as well, or just leaving that as a right-of-way, public way, a Class 5 road?
The section on the butterfly
Yep,
park or
yep.
next to the butterfly
Yep.
park lies outside of the existing
Oh, okay.
right-of-way.
All
Yep.
right, so that'll be the Class A trail park.
Yes.
All right, good,
Yep.
thank you.
I don't need it for today, but for the council meetings, you're going to get a doodle of what this looks like?
Yeah,
Even if it's just-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've already got that doodle from the original concept sketches, so.
It's just
we can
hard to
send-
remember what that, yeah, I think.
Yep,
that's
yep, we
perfect,
can send
yeah.
that.
Thank you very much.
Members of the public? Okay, motion, please.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute an engineer service change order with DuBois in exchange for additional service required for the design of the Marlborough Street Corridor project for an amount not to exceed $20,000, funded to come from the Marlborough Street Corridor Project 75J0018 Bravo.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none. All in favor?
Thank you.
No one's opposed, unanimous. Thank you. All right, so moving along, capital improvements program. Schedule was changed a little bit, so everybody's come to party tonight. And I've been told several different times that will be done, but do not hesitate to discuss whatever you're going to bring forward to us. And as usual, we're going to want to really talk about anything that's new in the next 2 years and anything that's major change to the current schedule. And the lineup is Police Department, first ones.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members, Steve Stewart, Police Chief. This should be a easy start in for you. It's probably some of the simplest things that you'll hear about all night, so I'll try to be brief and get the night moving along. So the first project that we're just finishing up in FY25 is the third year of our mobile radio replacement program, which we'll do the last third, so it's 8 or 9 radios, and that'll get us up to speed on mobile radios, which are the ones that are in the vehicles. They have a longer range than the portable radios that are on the shoulder, so those are critical for us to be able to communicate. And then the second one is a new project. It's a crime scene van. So currently, we're using a 2007 ambulance that was turned over to us from the fire department after they had it for 9 years. So we've had it since 2016. That vehicle is near the end of its life. It's starting to become unreliable, and it lacks a lot of the professional features that a vehicle of its nature should have. So with crime scenes, there's a lot of times when you don't get a second chance to gather the evidence that you need, and it's critical that we're able to include all of the equipment necessary for processing a crime scene in one location. So this vehicle does that. It provides ample storage. It provides areas for storage of generators, extra lighting, an awning. It could be double as a command post, and there's just a lot of good features to it that are sort of critical for being a professional police department and investigating serious crimes, to include serious motor vehicle accidents on our highways.
Questions up here? So 2 city councilors and the members of the public, so. Nothing there. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Parking projects.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chair. Tonight, the parking is going to be presented by myself, although there's other folks here that can certainly help answer questions related to parking if you're interested. But the engineering division does have a role in planning and overseeing a lot of the larger capital maintenance and construction projects that the parking fund does on their facilities. So that's why I'm presenting tonight. And we are going to start on page 120. Okay. So starting on page 120, the surface lot program has not been changed since the previous iteration of this book. Within the next couple of years, in FY25, we have essentially a preservation project planned for the Library Annex, Elm Street lot, Wells Street / Roxbury Plaza, and Gilbo East parking lot. And, you know, if you're like me, earlier tonight, I looked at that list and I thought, man, we just paved the Gilbo East parking lot. But actually, by the time this work gets done in 25, that pavement will be about 7 years old. I think the oldest of that list is going to be the Elm Street lot, and that's going to be about 10 years at that point. So it will be the right time to do that sort of preservation treatment, very similar to what we did previously on the Commercial Street parking lot. It'll be surface applied, spray applied surface treatment, crack sealing, minor repairs to the pavement just to extend its service life. Okay. Okay, the next one up is going to be the City Hall lot. This one, in 26, the budget has been updated from the previous version of the book just to reflect what we got for pricing on the recently completed Wells Street project. But this is looking at things like repairing the surface that's on the deck right now. There's a concrete overlay on there now, and I'm sure you've seen that starting to get pitted. The highway team has made a number of repairs over time, but that surface treatment has to be removed and replaced. As we get a little closer, I think we'll narrow that down and figure out exactly what kind of membrane or waterproofing system we'll put on it. But that is the intention of that work.
Thank you. Part of this, and I know this might be too far in the weeds, so if it is, that's okay. I can hold it. Is there a plan for where people go in that interim state? Like, because we're doing construction on that. Those are reserved spots for both city as well as businesses down here.
Yeah, so it'll be managed very similar to the way we did the project a couple of years ago, where we didn't allow the contractor free reign of the site. Basically, there was, there was limitations to what he could use or block off at any particular time. Most of this work is actually planned for the upper deck more than underneath. There's some concrete spall repairs on the lower side, but the majority of the work will happen on the upper deck, which is not the reserve spaces. But that said, the detailed plan of where do we direct our customers to park during the work, that gets done during the design phase.
Thank you.
Next. So the next page, 122, is a similar program for the Wells Street lot. This page will, I think, as long as I get my way, this page will always be in the book, projecting, what's going to be the next small, minor rehabilitation or preservation project. The idea is to make periodic small investments to keep the asset in good condition, nip things in the bud before they really start to deteriorate. So there's nothing planned for the next couple of years, but in FY28 we've got sort of a nominal dollar amount in the program. And 2 years from now, when we're getting into that sort of time horizon, we'll have a plan of what actually needs to be done. Okay, this is the big exciting one, West Side parking garage. I know this is interest for a lot of folks in the community. Right now, we are advertising for a consultant to do what's called the feasibility study. Basically, determine what are the realistic sites, what kind of garage can they accommodate, what's the economics, how do we pay for this and make the economic viability of that garage work. What would we need to do in terms of operations, staffing, and the cost to maintain it? So that is going to get done over the next couple of years, and then in FY26 we have budgeted to begin the actual detailed design of whatever structure we end up deciding to move forward. I would expect that a couple of years from now that FY28 number will be refined, based on what we end up deciding. I think that number is a good solid budget. We could build a garage for that, or alternatively, depending on what the community wants to build, it could be a lot more than that, or it could be cheaper than that. But really, it's, that's kind of the range that we're looking at.
Have we looked into having, like Manchester does, most of their structures are privately owned and maintained as opposed to it falling on the city taxpayers? Did we look into that?
So I think that's one of the big purposes of this feasibility study is, like I was saying, to figure out how to make it work economically. I think to make it work, we're going to have to identify specific user bases that are going to reserve a certain amount of spaces and pay for those, so we know that there's a certain base level of revenue to pay for it. Or we partner with a third-party consultant or a vendor that would operate the structure for us, and they would be responsible for the routine care and feeding of it and operating it. There's a number of different models, and that's kind of what we got to figure out.
Okay, because I was looking, it's like over $1 million for the feasibility study, which is a big number.
No, not
Like
quite.
design?
The
and design- or
1.1 is the actual design, so that's like construction level details, drawings, and specifications. Right now, the study we're working on now, I think, has a budget of 237.
219.
219.
so
Yeah, I'm
close.
sorry.
Thank you.
I wasn't paying attention. It does say design, sorry.
Yeah, Don's doing such a great job, and I was kind of praying I wouldn't have to get up and speak because he's doing such a great job. His answer is actually correct. One of the reasons for doing the feasibility study.
Don't say it like you're surprised.
Well, we are, not being sarcastic like others, but we are. But, that's the purpose of the feasibility study is to try to determine its need, try to determine who our partners might be, and our partners might change over time depending on what happens. We could get a development proposal, for example, on Emerald Street that might affect that. There's a lot of different potentials for that, and that's going to play into the design and operation. If you have a 2-story or a 3-story parking garage that's just for people day parking, that's very different than having a 24-hour system where people are paying to park in there as if it were their driveway, for example, or having one of the tenants or one of the owners of that be a leased building that's renting apartments or things like that. So the makeup of the different users of that, to a great extent, is going to determine the operations, the design, and the financing stack that ultimately will go into this garage,
Thank you.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
More than he did, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's like he needs to channel court tonight.
Yeah. And that's, I think mine is poking at the same space of I'm aligned with, I hope through that feasibility study, we find that there might be a partner that's interested and might pay that 1.1 and figure it out, and they'll do the design if we're signing an intent with them, and they'll pay for it. I would love to see it be privately built, privately paid for, and privately run, and let somebody make money off of it, as long as we get some control, right, to set it up. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? So, for a conceptual project, this picture is best we've got.
It's pretty, isn't it?
And you saved the pumpkin on the coal towers.
We did.
That's sort of telling me that we're going to keep those coal towers.
That's a good eye.
That is a really good idea.
That's nice. Next one.
So the last item in the parking fund, I'd like you to kind of consider just to be a placeholder. It's not within the next couple of years, but it is there to sort of, just put an earmark down for the need for eventually addressing electric vehicle charging in the public realm. We are wrapping up right now a study that's been going on for about 4 months with a consulting team that's trying to give us some sort of guidelines on where we need infrastructure for EV charging, what types of chargers, how many we need, that sort of thing. I am hoping to bring that report back to MSFI, hopefully the end of this month. And I think, that'll start a conversation about, well, we're planning here to start implementing that in '27. Is that acceptable, or do you want us to accelerate that? If so, what does that mean? But I think that right now is really just a placeholder for a project that we know is going to be coming.
Any further questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
Page 204. James?
Good evening, councilors, City Manager. Jim Outford, Fleet Services Manager.
Duncan Watson, Assistant Public Works Director. I'm going to let Jimmy take the fleet part of things and segue over to solid waste, and I'll take care of that.
I will move on to the CIP schedule for the equipment replacement program. As most of you know, there's 157 vehicles in the CIP replacement program for the city of Keene. This year, we did have to put some more monies in that CIP as the cost of vehicles has gone up a lot in the last couple of years. We do all that we possibly can to save as much money when it comes to buying any of the vehicles and the equipment. Case in point, recently we just bought a 2021 a used skid steer with 2,000-hour warranty on for the highway division. That saved us $17,000 off the cost of a new machine. So we try to do that stuff as much as we absolutely possibly can. We've actually recycled some vehicles out of the PD so that we don't have to replace a lot of staff cars. Those cars, we still get some more time out of them. Sometimes they're still in warranty. So that's been pretty successful for us for a couple of years. And the schedule, we've actually have made this schedule so that what you're looking at is good until FY '31. So hopefully this will work out for us. I don't really have any doubts about it, but that's where we're at as far as the CIP schedule goes for the equipment fund.
Questions? Very good, thank you.
But he's
Any
not
data?
quite done yet.
Oh, I got plenty more.
You have to wait
Thank
till the
you.
end.
A couple of things that we're gonna kind of join together. If you look through on page 206 and 205, 206, the fleet building hasn't had any fire suppression in it ever. So that project we've been working on for a little while now, and we put a place mark amount of money in there for engineering. But this is also gonna become part of the Fleet Services Building Upgrade Project, which is, a few years out right now. We don't really have any idea what those dollars are gonna be. We have a company now that we're in contract with called RTA out of Missouri. They're coming to evaluate the building. They're coming to evaluate if we have enough room to do what we're currently doing. For those of you that haven't been down there, the fire department has a 48-foot truck that we're putting in a 60-foot building to work on. There's 4 mechanics there. A few years ago, we repurposed the wash bay because we changed that program a little bit for a equipment repair bay. That gave us a little bit more room, but we quickly filled that up with equipment that we need to work on today's equipment that we currently own. So we'll bring more back on that situation in another year or two when we find out a little bit more information on what's going to happen with the fleet building, whether anything happens, to come, I suppose, The last project that's on there is the roof project. The roof project we revisited again. We started that a few years ago, but unfortunately, the roof in the Fleet Services building is 40 years old. There's, some modern wiring and plumbing that has gone up in that building since the roof was initially put on. But the roof that's on there now actually is mechanically held down, screws, bolts, nails, that kind of thing. We can't do that anymore because of all the stuff that's on the ceiling, the safety-wise, and for code, we have to put a bonded roof down, which is a glued process. So we had to come back and ask for more funding because that roof is almost double what the original estimate was back in 2019. So that project we're hoping to get along and be done by the end of 2024-25 season.
Questions on those two? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving over to the Solid Waste Fund, a couple projects just want to call your attention to. On page 131, this is basically a recycling equipment replacement program, but it really, the way I see it is that it's a capital reserve program. We have a number of pieces of large equipment that would require capital expenditures when those pieces of equipment are no longer functioning properly. We, through our operating budget, contract for repair and maintenance of these pieces of equipment, and this include things like the in-feed conveyor, the cross-belt magnet, the actually sorting conveyor, the eddy current separator, which is the non-ferrous metal aluminum can remover, and then the primary and secondary baler that we have up there. So these pieces of equipment, when they do come up for repair or replacement, it's only when we really can't repair it anymore. So we allocate the funds to stay in the account so that when it does have to be replaced, when there's no other options, we have the monies to be able to do that, and that's what this page is showing. On page 132, kind of the same thing. This is our lifeblood of our system. This is our weight scale replacement project. We again service our scale regularly because we're required to do so per the New Hampshire Bureau of Weights and Measures. But the scale really is the sort of the heart of our whole system up at the Solid Waste Division. Everything that comes into our facility, everything that goes out of our facility, in one way or another is weighed. And that's how we determine our tipping fees and our revenue sources, both for the incoming waste that is being transferred, as well as the sale of the commodities that we process through the recycling center. So right now, in this moment in time, the scale looks like it's in good shape. We maintain it regularly, but we have, the scale has a load cell, and when that load cell goes, then the scale needs replacement. But until such time, we don't need to replace it, but we would need the monies to be there for that eventual replacement. So what would happen when it does get replaced is that the scale company would bring in a temporary scale while they refurbished the other scale. We'd probably stay with the existing the pit, but they'd replace the load cell and probably the decking at the same time, and then we'd be back in business, and these funds would be adequate to be able to get us right back into business. We won't miss a beat. It's just, it's better to have a permanent in-ground scale than a temporary scale for a whole lot of purposes. On page 133 is the pavement replacement project. That's actually, we're hoping to get on that right as the calendar turns into July. For those of you who have traveled up to the recycling center in recent times, you might have noticed that we paved the access road that goes up to the upper level. That was done because we've had all kinds of trouble with that gravel road. The rutting in it from the wheels spinning differential. The drainage has been issues. When you get a heavy rainstorm, it can wash out some of our side roads. And winter maintenance is just a disaster up there because it's you can't put salt or anything on gravel roads. So having that paved, it sort of showed us the world of the possible. But this project that we're proposing for 2025 will be the existing paved surfaces all throughout the facility. So the entrance road, the entire access road, through the gate, through the scale house, around the scale, around the building, up by the transfer station, and then the exit by the transfer station. And this pavement is this facility opened in 1994, so it's now 30 years old, and it's just gotten to the point now where the pavement is so brittle. The highway division does a great job when we ask them to come up and repair some of the potholes that happen up there, but it's just getting to the point now where the patchwork really isn't holding up, and we're seeing in some cases some of the subbase is starting to wash out, and it's causing some road subsidence and some other issues. So it's due for a full-on mill shim overlay, which is what we'll do in July.
And then on page 134, to tag along with that idea of how we pave the access road, this would be paving the upper level surface. So up where the public drop-off is, up where you go to go access the compost piles, the brush pile, the scrap metal, the construction and demolition debris, the household hazardous waste collections, all those areas will be paved and shaped so that the drainage is better, and then it'll result in a much better customer experience, as well as improving our winter maintenance capabilities. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleague Brett and I are going to sort of tag team the next, I don't know, 10, 12 pages or so. So you're not having to suffer through listening to me for the next half hour. But we will start on page 86 with the downtown project. And this page on 86, I'd like to spend just a minute explaining. Like a lot of our infrastructure projects, these projects that have multiple different utilities and a lot of different, components to them are funded through a number of different programs in the book. So what we've tried to do here is on a single page, explain that a little more clearly, like where all of the money is coming from, total it all up, and give a complete picture of the project. So the prior year column is the work that's already been appropriated. Those are funds that have already been approved, and that's the work that we've been doing to date. And then you have columns for 25, 26, 27, which is what we expect to do the construction project over. And then finally, on the far right of you have the totals for all of those. But essentially, there's 5 different pages in the book that you'll find the downtown project explained and funded in different ways. That includes the street sidewalk other, which is page 87. Under traffic signal replacement, there's a couple of years of that funding has been dedicated to replace the signals on Central Square. Stormwater resiliency, we'll talk about in a minute. That's about $4.5 million of the total project is just dedicated towards replacing the storm drainage system. I think some of you probably remember me talking about how these infrastructure projects, they may start out as water replacement, or they may start out because the sewers need to be replaced. Central Square and Main Street, that downtown project, really the genesis of that project was the storm drainage system and the needs to address there specifically. And then from there, we looked at what other systems needed to be addressed, and it turned into what it is. And then for sewer, that's described within the sewer fund program, and of course, the water distribution program is a big component as well. Below that top table, there's a breakdown of basically above ground infrastructure versus below ground utilities. So, this was sort of in response to some of the questions we had early on, like, about, well, why are we doing anything on the surface? Why don't we just replace the pipes? And the point of that is really that about 80%, 73%, I think, was the final number, of the work is below ground. But because we're digging up so much of the downtown, basically most of what you see today is going to be disturbed one way or the other. And then the question becomes, what do we put back? And that's the process we've been going through for the last couple of years. And then finally, I broke it down by the fund. So the general fund totals $9.3 million. Sewer is 3.5, and water is about 4 million of that total project. One thing I will also point out on this page or any of the others for the downtown, this does not assume any outside funding. This is, right now, we're making the assumption that we're not going to get any grants, and therefore that's what is funded and laid out in the book. Obviously, we're preparing that grant application that's due the end of this month. We're optimistic. We're going to build the most compelling argument for a grant from the federal government that we can, but that's not included in these numbers. And are there any questions on the downtown? Okay. Moving on, this is sort of related, but we kept it separate because, frankly, I think it warrants a separate conversation, and that is the downtown bathroom or public bathrooms for the downtown. I actually enjoyed a webinar this afternoon with the manufacturer of the model that you see in the photo there. It's called Blue. Oh boy, I just listened to him. I should remember Blue something. They manufacture these indestructible public bathrooms, self-cleaning. It's basically fabricated out of steel and concrete. The toilet cleans itself. It has a spray function that will wash the interior surfaces every 10th user. It's pretty impressive, I will say, but they're commensurately pricey. So we did put it in here because it's been something that's been talked about. It's been highly desired, but it is certainly worth a conversation. Okay.
So we like to say it's indestructible, but anybody who has kids who buys toys that is supposed to be indestructible, kids find a way. So if this has damage and proves not to be indestructible, are they going to pay to fix it?
Yeah, I haven't read the warranty for this particular manufacturer, and there are multiple manufacturers, obviously. This is just one particular model. There's no such thing as indestructible, right? If somebody really, really wants to, they can damage it. But this one in particular, for example, the interior walls are cast concrete with like a baked on enamel surface. The ceiling is stainless steel. The plumbing fixtures are built so that they're attached to the concrete wall with hardware that's in the locked utility space. So there's no nuts and bolts that anybody could get on to steal a plumbing fixture. The plumbing fixture itself is porcelain, and they entomb it, they wrap it in fiberglass so that it's not shatterable. The mirror is a sheet of polished stainless steel. I mean, it for $432,000, you get a nice product for sure. So yeah. Yeah. All right, the next page we get into is the road paving program. Not a lot of changes from previous years. The funding remains, essentially at that 1.4, 1.3, 1.5 type level every year. We continue to recommend and have included a defined preservation program each year. I do think that we're seeing benefits from that in terms of roads lasting longer before they start, having potholes and cracks and having problems. So I do recommend that we maintain that. There have been some minor adjustments in terms of which streets go where in the next couple of years. I didn't have a chance to highlight exactly which ones changed, but we do try to minimize the changes in the near term. Thinking that as it gets closer to being time to pave, we don't want to pull the wool out of people's. That's a bad analogy. We don't want to mislead people. How's that? But there are a few minor changes. Okay. All right. Now we're moving ahead to the bridge preservation and rehab programs, and I'll turn it over to Brett.
Thank you, Don. Good evening, Mr. Chair and councilors. Brett Rusnock. I'm the Infrastructure Project Manager at Public Works, and I'm reviewing the bridge rehab and replacement program. As you probably know, the city has 9 red listed bridges, And these are bridges that are inspected by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation every year, and they are in need of replacement. And these are for bridges rated between 1 and 5 on their rating scale. So they're not in imminent danger of collapse, but they are needing significant repair and replacement work. So the Winchester Street Route 10 bridge is the first one shown on this program, and that's scheduled to be replaced through the Lower Winchester Street project that we'll review a little bit later. And the Maple Avenue Bridge is also on this list. That one is currently funded by the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. And the other two bridges, Beaver Street and Church Street, the city has appropriated in previous capital plans our match for those bridges. However, the state's funding has been woefully inadequate. And in 2023, the state actually changed their bridge funding formula so that it's no longer a first come, first served basis. And that's how it used to be done, is that you would appropriate your money and request that they include the project in their program. And then 10 years later, you would get the state or federal funding. That's now being done by inspection priority, safety, traffic volume, and other considerations. And unfortunately, it's something that we have very little control over. So these are the ones that we've identified for replacement in the very near future. And I should also note that the George Street Bridge is already programmed for construction. So the funding is already in place, but it's not in the program because it was last year's funding. Any questions on bridge replacement? Great, thank you. On page 94 is something that Dawn and I are very excited to include in this, for the first time in this year's CIP. This is the Bridge Preservation Program. And what I alluded to in the Bridge Replacement Program is that the city's funding for our bridge replacement has exceeded what the New Hampshire DOT is able to provide. And therefore, we are suggesting that some of that funding be reallocated to this preservation program. And what this will do is it will allow the city to make repairs to bridges to extend their useful life. And we believe that in the long term, it's going to result in, I think we've identified approximate 15% cost reduction over the life of the bridge structure. And unfortunately, there's no federal or state funding source for bridge preservation, so this would be 100% city funded. And the first one that we've identified for this program would be the Main Street Bridge, Route 12 Bridge, over the Branch River. All right, and on page 96 is the Lower Winchester Street Reconstruction Project. We were very excited to include this graphic in the CIP showing two new proposed roundabouts at the intersection of Matthews Road and Criff Road. And this was part of the recommended alternative that the City Council recently moved forward. And I actually just submitted the engineering study for this project, which is the first step in the design, to the New Hampshire Department of Transportation today. And they will review it, get back to us with comments, and then we should shortly be able to enter preliminary design, which is the next phase. So this project, we're planning preliminary design. I don't think the schedule is outlined in detail right now in the CIP, but we're planning preliminary design through this year, and the New Hampshire Department of Transportation is managing the right-of-way process, and we're expecting that to take most of calendar year 25. And therefore, construction for this project would likely happen mostly in calendar year 26. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Brad.
This, I don't know what you would call it, but the structure underneath the bridge, I mean, is that a current picture that's having to wait until FY 31?
Yes, that is a picture that I took in the fall of 2023. And the what you're seeing there is a peeling of the paint underneath the bridge on the girders and the supports, and that is a little bit of rusting that is occurring there. It should be noted that there's very little section loss, which is loss of the supporting steel in those areas, but it's really important to get on those areas as soon as you can to do repainting or protection of those so that that rusting does not continue.
Because that, I'm looking at that picture, and I'm looking at the date of 2031, that seems an awfully long time to wait.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to get on my soapbox, but since you asked the question, I would love to. I've been, every couple of years when the state Gassett comes around and talks about the 10-year plan, I go to the meetings and I get on my soapbox and I talk about the need for the state to invest in municipal bridge preservation. The state actually has a pretty good, robust bridge preservation program for their own bridges, but they just don't have a program to help municipalities fund bridge preservation. So, it's almost like they're incentivizing municipalities to wait until their bridges are garbage before they spend millions of dollars to replace them, which is absurd. I haven't had any luck, trying to convince them of the wisdom of that. So I think that, even though the state isn't paying for any of this program, in the end, it's the right thing to do, and it will end up saving us money to spend a little bit to keep the bridge in good condition rather than waiting to when we have to replace a $2 million bridge, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying it's a shame that we didn't take that number for 31 and break it up and
Yeah.
push it back to closer to now than
So the other
one
thing
big chunk
I will
way off in the
mention
distance.
in that regard, just recently, I was here at this committee talking about unanticipated bridge funding. The last couple of years, the state has done one-time funding for both highways and bridges. Last year, we didn't have a specific purpose for that one-time funding, so we put it into our bridge capital reserve. The previous year, we had used it, we planned on spending most of that one-time funding to fund repairs to the Sullivan Road culvert that was damaged during the severe storms. FEMA decided that they weren't going to participate in that funding, so that project has kind of been put on hold, and that's not a preservation by any means. That's going to be a replacement. So because of those two things, and there is at least rumors that there's going to be another one-time funding this calendar year, this legislative session, we are going to have a little bit of extra money in our bridge capital reserve. And I think, depending on what happens with this year's funding at the state level, I would love to see that accelerated, that bridge preservation project brought forward. If the bridge capital reserve can bear the expenditures a little earlier, we're going to propose to do that.
I would have to agree with you and support that.
Good. Got one vote, Brett. Yes. Thank you.
So, sorry,
yeah.
I'm actually jumping back a couple because my brain ticked off. So I ticked onto this on 89, which is the roads that we're picking. There's one particular one that I don't see out till like 2030 that's really bad now, and it's Hastings. I don't know if that's on the list for like this year, and that's why I'm not seeing it, or if it's.
So it isn't on the list for this year or in the near term because it's timed specifically to coincide with the water main replacement. Now, the water main replacement has been kicked down the road a couple of times, and it is like one of our sore spots that we get a ton of calls on, especially at this time of year or as we get into the end of February, early March, when we start to have that thaw. The highway crew gets a lot of calls out there. They are planning to do a little bit more work in terms of I'm sure you probably heard that Highway recently acquired a drag box, what's called a drag box. It's basically like, think road paver 1.0. It attaches to the back of a dump truck instead of being a self-propelled machine. It doesn't have the bells and whistles that a full paver would have, but it's relatively inexpensive. and it does much better than we were able to do with just a grader. They're planning on using that on Hastings to do a little bit, I'll call it a more thorough Band-Aid, if you will.
Okay, it's one that I get phone calls about too, so that's why
Yeah, it's one of the ones that we know is a real problem, and it needs to be addressed, but at the same time, I don't want to invest, a couple $100,000 in
then dig it up for
redoing it and then tearing it up in 6 years.
Okay, and that's, yeah, I was wondering if there was timing for the water main for that, and that's out.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that also, Court Street, seems like it's not in great shape, but that's out into 2027.
Which section of Court Street?
Just throughout the whole thing, there's a lot of big holes and cracks.
So the portion of Court Street we did last year, from basically the hospital out to, I think it was just around East Surrey Road, was recently redone. From East Surrey Road out to Maple Ave is going to be timed with, again, with water main work, and I forget the year, I think that's 27 or 28.
The other thing, I mean, it's indirectly related, is, in the master plan, we've always talked about having walkability and bikeability, and there's plenty of walkability on Court Street, but it looks like whenever it was redesigned, they never contemplated bike paths or bike lanes.
I'm going to plead ignorance to that. That project happened before I started, so I'm not sure why the decision was made not to include bike lanes. When that was like 2008, 2010 timeframe, that infrastructure work was done. So I don't know, what the thinking was at that time, but that's a fair observation.
Yeah, because, I mean, the goal has always been this connectivity of
Yeah.
connecting the different bike lanes and trails and paths together, and it's like you find a lot of people end up understandably so using the sidewalks
Yeah.
because it's just not safe, there's not enough room. I mean, there's anyways, like I said, it's indirectly related, but just wanted to mention it.
Thank you.
I think one of the problems for the Court Street area, at least in the lower section, was right-of-way was only so wide, there was only so much space, and giving a certain amount to parking really narrowed it up.
Yeah, my guess was that they built it to the right-of-way limits, and the need to maintain the on-street parking was the bigger concern at that time.
However, to Bettina's other point, the lower part of Court Street, it is taking a beating. Even though it's not that old, for some reason, it seems to get beat pretty hard.
So, like I said, that was done in, I think it was 2010 was the year that work was done. It does get a lot of traffic. It's one of our most heavily trafficked roads. We did do a preservation treatment on it in 2016. That preservation treatment is expected to add 6 to 7 years of life to the pavement, which is, and right now you can see where it's worn through. That it's like a 3/8 inch slurry that we put on it in 2016, and that's basically been worn right through, in the wheel ruts. So yeah, we got our money's worth out of it, but now it's pretty well shot.
Yes, sir.
To go back to answer your question, when they got ready to do Court Street, the biggest argument at that time did not even discuss bike lanes. The biggest argument was that about half the council wanted to put bump outs all the way up and down Court Street and then put trees in every single one of the bump outs. That was the big argument. The reasonable folks won and did not put the bump outs in. Can you picture how bad it would be that we had the bump outs and trying to plow and everything?
Thank you. All right, I think we are at West Street, page 97. Brett didn't mention it, I'll forgive him, but Lower Winchester Street has a summary page like we talked about for downtown. This one does include a table that shows the city share versus the DOT share. Similarly, on page 97, we have that same type of table showing the breakdown of funding between the city and DOT for the West Street corridor. Typically, the DOT will not participate in utility work if it's just being done to, good state of repair for the utilities. If we can demonstrate that, in order to put this traffic signal here, we have to relocate the sewer main that's running through it. Sometimes we can get them to cover some of the cost of the utility work, but generally they don't pay the, transportation funds to pay for the utility work. So the DOT share covers 80% of the transportation, stormwater components, but not the water and sewer. But this is in the state 10-year plan for 2030. It's a long ways out, obviously, and it's pretty desperately needed. Actually, I'm sorry, it starts in 27 with the design, construction for 2032 right now. At this point, we really can't tell you like what it's going to look like or what we're going to be building. That's got to be part of the process of going through the Federal Highway DOT design criteria, where you've got to look at alternatives and have public engagement and figure out which alternative best meets the purpose and need for the project. So that'll start in 27. The next up is the sidewalk asset management plan. This is, again, one that, it's never going to end. We'll constantly be working on it. Over the course of the next 7 years, there's a total of about 2.1 miles. I think all of these are asphalt sidewalks that are planned for replacement. That's been kind of the focus for the last several years, and it's really our biggest need, so I expect it'll be the focus for a while yet to come. It's a significant increase in the investment that in sidewalks that we were making just a few years ago. I know that there's some folks would love to see it, be a lot more, but it's a big increase. We were at about 75,000 or so a year just a few years ago. So I think it's a step in the right direction for sure. Basically, it allows us to do about 1,500 feet of sidewalk replacement a year.
And how do you decide, like, which ones? Because I see that Beaver Street is on 2029.
Yep.
And I know that Counselor Williams, who's a ward counselor there, has come and spoken about it at a couple of different meetings over the last few years. And I spoke about it way back in 2012 when I was a city councilor for that ward. And in my mind, I'm thinking, Beaver Street's fairly significant because you have Franklin Elementary School there, and a lot of the families walk their kids, or the kids walk by themselves, and there's cross guards on Beaver Street. So, in my mind, I'm thinking, it seems like we should prioritize the streets where we have young children walking to make sure that they're safe.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. So, trying to think, if it was 22 or 23 we did the asset management plan. Was it 22?
We started it in
I think
2022.
I think so. So we went through a process with MSFI where we kind of developed its asset management plan. And one of the things we talked about is how do we prioritize? The fact of the matter is that of the 28 miles, I think, of asphalt sidewalk in our inventory, there's a lot of need. So if we just went, worst first, we wouldn't be able to prioritize because it's all the worst, right? So what we looked at are a number of different criteria, things like proximity to traffic generators. You mentioned Franklin School. So proximity to schools was one of the criteria. Proximity to commercial districts, shopping areas like downtown was one of the criteria. Proximity to public amenities like parks or a swimming pool, that sort of thing. So we're trying to identify like what is going to generate pedestrian traffic to want to travel the streets around it. And for each of these sidewalks, there were 500 or so in our inventory, sidewalk segments, we looked at how many of these different traffic draws, if you will, exist within a certain radius. I think we used a quarter mile. And that kind of added up to a score. So that was one part of the score, sort of the need-based score. And then we looked at the condition as the other piece, the condition-based score. And then we combined those and sort of ranked them that way. So off the top of my head, I don't remember, how a specific segment scored on each of these different criteria. But that was sort of the logic we went through with MSFI and developing this asset management plan.
Thanks.
Okay. And next up, sidewalk and, traffic signals. Yeah, I mentioned earlier, 2 years of funding was dedicated for the downtown program. That was in previous CIPs. In the near term, 25, we have a smaller amount of money to address the flashing signals at Court Street at Vernon and Washington at Vernon, so that both ends of the fire department's access route there. And those are relatively, minor upgrades, just those signals are in pretty good shape already. They just needed a few adjustments to make them compliant with current standards. In 2026, we have budgeted Central Schools. All right, I have to confer with my colleague here. Is the new funding in 2026? I thought that was already funded.
I don't know.
Okay, I may need to get back to you on 2026. I thought that Central Square was funded in 23 and 24, so I'm not sure. Oh, no, I'm just reading the table wrong. Thank you, sorry. My eyes are crosswise. In 2026, we're funding Ashbrook Road at Ashbrook Court. That's over in front of the little liquor store. And that one went in as part of the Monadnock Marketplace, which you're probably going to say was just a few minutes ago, right?
No, you're not gonna need it then. They're leaving.
Well, that's true. But something presumably will go into the liquor store. And the businesses on the other side of the street are still, going gangbusters. So that is funded for 2026.
Okay.
And over to you.
Thank you, Don. The next program we've identified in the book on pages 103 and 104 is the General Fund Dam Maintenance Program. And this program is providing for projects to make repairs to city-owned dams that serve a recreational or flood control purpose that are above and beyond the city's maintenance staff ability to perform. And so the first project we've identified is the 3 Mile Reservoir Control Dam. That's up along Route 10. And that's a flood control structure that was built by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in 1986. It was turned over to the city of Keene for maintenance into perpetuity. And both the State Dam Bureau and the Army Corps of Engineers inspect that yearly. And they give us a list of things that either need to be maintained internally or are bigger projects that need to be undertaken. So that's the first project we've identified, and the second one is the Goose Pond Dam spillway structure. That spillway structure was built in 1994, and it was not part of the 2019 reconstruction project. And we've identified some issues with the concrete of the spillway itself, and also the downstream channel of that spillway is severely eroded, and it needs some maintenance work to be stable. And then in 2030, we don't know yet what project makes the most sense, but because we get inspected every 2 years by the state for our high hazard dams, we expect that there's going to be some maintenance needs in the future. The next project to discuss is on page 105. That's the Beaverbrook Flood Mitigation Project. We've been working off and on with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers over the past couple of years to work on a existing conditions hydrologic analysis of the Beaverbrook watershed. Unfortunately, it's a very slow process, and there are various funding mechanisms through the Army Corps of Engineers, some that we've been exploring tentatively, and then down the road, they tell us that that funding source won't work for some reason or another. So it's kind of been limping along, and we included funding in FY '28 and '29 with the anticipation that we will finally get that agreement finalized with the Army Corps, and that they will actually want to participate in construction improvements along the Beaverbrook watershed. We don't know what these projects will be yet. A couple of ideas are improving flood storage within the watershed. Also maybe some smaller scale, more distributed improvements higher up in the watershed. And potentially obstruction reduction. For example, along the Kingsbury property, there's a number of sharp bends in the channel. There's a structure that overhangs the channel. So we just don't know yet what those improvements might be. And the next, on page 106 and 107 of the book, is the Stormwater Resiliency Program. And you may be shocked at some of the costs that are suggested for some of these projects. And it's shocking to us as well. And unfortunately, these are projects that are either needed to improve the resiliency and reliability of city infrastructure, or these are ones that we've identified that are high-risk structures for repair or replacement. So the first 3 years are funding dedicated to the downtown infrastructure project. And as Don alluded to before, some of those, one project is the stormwater line that runs underneath Central Square, is a 24-inch diameter. It's clay. It was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It's in rough shape and needs to be replaced. And then other areas are down near Eagle Court and Water Street. There's an area of persistent flooding that we know is undersized and needs to be upgraded as part of this program. And unfortunately, with stormwater pipes, a lot of times we need to put in some really large diameter. On Roxbury Street in 2021, we installed a 5-foot diameter plastic pipe. And once you have the pipe diameter itself, plus the thickness, plus the trenching needed, it ends up being almost a 12 or 15-foot wide trench that is going through the street. And therefore, there's a lot of associated utility relocations for sewer and water infrastructure. And there's also a lot of surface feature restoration included as part of that too. So that's part of the reason why some of these projects are extremely expensive, is that they have a wide geographic footprint.
Quick
So-
question.
Yes.
Question. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing that we have pipes that are over 100 years old that are still working. When we go to replace them, what kind of lifespan do the new pipes have?
That's a great question. We, since I believe the late 80s and early 90s, the city has been installing what's called high-density polyethylene stormwater pipe. And that's a plastic resin that's formed, and it has a smooth interior and a corrugated or ribbed exterior. And to be honest, I don't think we've replaced any of those pipes yet due to failure of the pipe itself. Sometimes the joints become dislocated and we have to do spot repairs on those. I think, and I might be wrong, the intended design lifespan is at least 50 years on those pipes.
80.
80? 80 years on those pipes, and it could be quite longer.
Thank you.
So I did also want to mention One of the first projects in 2025 is on Key Road, and that is a stormwater pipe that's buried underneath the Keene Cinemas parking lot, and it collects a city tax ditch. It routes it underneath the parking lot, and it connects to a ditch system downstream. That one we know has failures along the pipe already. There's areas that are partially collapsed, and our highway crews have responded to over the years, doing patching and pothole filling as best they can. But those maintenance needs are increasing in frequency, and we think this is one of the highest risk structures that we need to address. And unfortunately, due to the watershed tributary to that pipe, we are proposing that it needs to be a dual 48-inch pipe system to carry the flow that it needs to carry. So again, it's a significant impact and need to restore the surface after that work is done. And I am going to pass it off to Dawn.
My turn again?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
The page 108, we're talking about the stormwater channel maintenance program. This has been coming forward over the last couple of iterations, but the project program actually begins in 2025. The intention of this is to address our open channel. So we've made a lot of progress on the closed drainage systems, both through the regular operational maintenance that our crews do with vacuuming them out and cleaning them and inspecting them, but also repairing them through these stormwater resiliency projects. The stormwater channel maintenance is looking at those open drainage ditches, mostly man-made ditches, that allow certain parts of the city to be developed and developable. So for example, Production Ave, at one time, that was all swampland surrounding Ash Swamp Brook. The reason that development exists is because the city, or I guess it was the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or Soil Conservation Service, whatever they were called back in the 50s, built that system of drainage ditches to convey water away from these wetlands. We went in and, people developed that land. Now that land is sort of relying on those open channel ditches to keep that land dry. And the city does have some maintenance responsibilities to maintain those. So this program is trying to address those needs. We'll start by figuring out exactly what needs to be done and sort of planning and permitting all of that work. And then the hope is over the course of the program, I think this was planned for 8-year period, I think, we'll address, it was 8 miles per year was the plan to develop. I don't know that that's realistic, but we'll figure that out over this first period of time. Okay. The stormwater spot repair program is one of our sort of annual, what I call a capital maintenance. It's trying to address that sort of sore spot between these larger capital projects like Brett was talking about with the stormwater resiliency, where we're replacing an entire drainage system, and the spot repair operational work that our crews do, where, hey, we've got this one basin that collapsed or this section of pipe failed. This spot repair program is looking to address those things that aren't programmed years and years in advance, but urgent need develops, and it's really beyond the capabilities of our equipment and what our crews can do with in-house forces. So typically, these are, the specific scope of these are identified annually in conjunction with the highway crew. They say, hey, this street has had, 3 pipe failures in the last year. We think we need to replace this 400-foot section, and we'll do it under this program. But that's kind of the intent of this page. The next one, the stormwater system analysis, this is really design money that we use in advance of these larger projects to, allows us to do a couple of things. It really allows us to refine the scope for the stormwater resiliency projects, figure out, okay, well, we know, for example, we've got a repetitive flooding problem on, in the Carpenter Ave, Beaver Street neighborhood. What's the issue in that neighborhood? What pipes are undersized, and what's it gonna cost? What do we have to do to fix it? So as part of this program, we'll have a consultant look at specific drainage areas, plan out what needs to be done, and then that becomes a cost estimate and a project proposal under the larger stormwater resiliency program. Over the last couple of years, we've underspent the money that was budgeted, so there's no more new money funded for 25 and 26, and then we resume in 27 with an annual allotment to allow us to keep up with that. Okay. And then the stormwater main lining program. This is a relatively new program. It really started last year. That work is still underway. We did some preliminary investigations and design work for a couple of lengths of the stormwater system. The idea of this program is to look at specifically the corrugated metal pipes that were installed, very popular in the 70s and 80s. Seemed like a good idea at a time. It wasn't. A lot of those pipes now are at the end of their 30, 40-year service life, and they're usually what we see is the invert of the pipe, the bottom of the pipe essentially rusts out, and then you've got an arch with just nothing on the bottom, and it just starts carrying away the soil around it, and eventually that pipe will collapse. So the idea here is to look at some of the larger ones of those, identify the ones that can still be addressed through a non-excavation method, a no-dig method like lining, and then line them before they become a complete replacement project.
Yes, sir.
It seems as listening to what you guys are saying is the things that went over in the ground about 100 years ago or more seem to be pretty dependable, but the last 50 or 70 years of really great ideas have not turned out to be great ideas.
Yeah, so it really comes down to material, right? So the vitrified clay storm drains, we've got 24-inch, 30-inch clay pipes that are still in amazingly good condition. And they're 80, 90, 100 years old. The corrugated metal pipes were cheaper and they were easier. Two men could pick up a 20-foot length of corrugated metal pipe and lower it into the trench, no problem. But they, when you combine constant ebb and flow of water with salt used for road treatment, they just, I think they were intended for a 30 or 40-year service life, and they've provided that, but they're not going to be around in 100 years, for sure. Yeah. I will also say that there's some things that were done, 80, 90 years ago that were terrible ideas as well. One of the sort of sore spots for all homeowners, and this was 50s, 60 timeframe, they started using something called Orangeburg pipe. Basically, imagine like a cardboard soaked in asphalt, and they used that as sewer pipes. Well, those are all completely, gone to nothing at this point, and cause a lot of problems for homeowners. Luckily, the city doesn't have any sewer mains, public mains that are made of that material, but, just because it's old doesn't mean it was a great idea, and just because it's new doesn't mean it was a great idea. But some things have definitely stood the test of time better than others. Thank you. Wait a minute, what's next? Oh, I don't think it gets to go away yet.
What's next?
Sewer.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow committee members. Aaron Costa, Assistant Public Works Director, Wastewater Treatment Plant Manager. Tonight I have a team of individuals. With me, I have Christian Tarr, Utilities Maintenance Manager, Ben Crowder, Water Sewer Operations Manager, and of course, Don Lucier, City Engineer, that's going to help me through the Water and Sewer Fund CIP plan. Starting off kind of just with the the overview of the system. The city owns a sewer system that consists of approximately 94 miles of pipe, 2,400 manholes, 5 wastewater pumping station, including Martell Court Pump Station, which you've all heard me talk about numerous times, and a treatment plant that was constructed in 1985 and is approaching 40 years old. Treatment plant was designed to treat 6 million gallons of wastewater every day with peak flows up to 21. And our average daily flow is approximately 3 million gallons a day. So we do have a number of projects that we're going to talk about tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Don and Ben. They're going to take you through the first few projects, starting on page 147 and 148.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, so the Stormwater Improvements Program, page 147, is really, the corollary to the Stormwater Resiliency Program that Brett talked about earlier. This is the program where we pay for our major sewer improvements, things that are either undersized and need additional capacity, or have decayed to the point where they're no longer able to be rehabilitated. They need to be fully replaced. So in the near term, 25, 26, 27, this program is going to be dedicated to funding the downtown sewer improvements. And it breaks it down by year and how much total we're doing. Altogether, there's about 4,500 feet, I think a little bit more, of sewer mains within the downtown that are going to be replaced under this program. Okay. Over to you.
Good evening, Ben Crowder, Water and Sewer Operations Manager. Starting on page 149, Sewer Manhole Lining Program. This project targets over 200 of the city's brick manholes. Over time, the mortar that holds these manholes together deteriorates and causes the bricks actually to fall into the sewer main, which may cause blockages, which is obviously a huge environmental concern. These manholes are also areas where water can infiltrate the sewer system, which increases costs for pumping and also increases costs for treating clean water. This program provides the funding to rehabilitate these structures by lining the interior surface with an epoxy-based mortar. Any questions? Page 150, Sewer Main Lining Program. This ongoing program funds the lining of sewer mains that have adequate capacity but have some structural defects like leaking joints. So in 2019, the city developed a sewer main assets management plan, which prioritizes repairs based on age, size, material, and proximity to critical facilities. Sewer main assets are evaluated first for rehab under this lining program, and if they are not good candidates for rehab, they are then planned to be replaced through the sewer improvements program. In 2015, the city also performed a series of flow tests to identify areas of infiltration and inflow, or I&I. So working with these two plans, we were actually able to select areas that are eligible for lining due to those two problems we're having, I&I and the asset management. So that in the next 3 to 4 years, this program will focus on neighborhoods east of Main Street with high I&I. Any questions? Page 151, Lower Winchester Street, reconstruction sewer infrastructure. This request is just funding the lining of approximately 3,970 feet of asbestos cement sewer mains. And also, this is funding the sewer main that is currently suspended underneath the Winchester Street Bridge. That will be replaced with an inverted siphon. That's it for me on sewer.
All right, page 152, sludge dryer at the wastewater treatment plant. We've talked about this many times. The city received a grant in 2023 to kind of evaluate biosolids and a sludge dryer. Many years, the city's focused on its effluent discharge permit and meeting compliance with that. But now we do have to start thinking about biosolids management and how we're going to manage biosolids in the future, given the current landscape. There's three ways to get rid of biosolids, as you've all heard me talk about before. There's incineration. One plant in the state does that. That's Manchester. Those would be, costly to build, as well as there's, operational issues with that, including there's permit requirements, et cetera. There's the beneficial reuse or land application of biosolids, where a company would, for a fee, take away our biosolids. They would compost it, get it ready for land application. But because of the PFAS issues that are being raised right now, that outlet may not be there in the future. And then there's landfilling, was what the city currently does with its biosolids. We currently contract with Waste Management and have for many years to haul and dispose of our waste over in their turnkey landfill in Rochester. We produce about 4,500 tons per year. The cost is approximately $125 a ton. It's our most expensive line item in our operating budget, around $600,000 per year. And the gist of it is that at the wastewater plant, there's a liquid sludge. It's usually 2 to 3% solids. And we try to dewater it to the best of our capability using the equipment we have. And we can get that about 30% solids, which leaves it about 70% still water. So a sludge dryer would be an add-on piece of equipment to our process that would take that 30% solid product and get it to about 90 to 95% solid, thus reducing our overall tonnage that we have to haul away and dispose of. Plus, it also kind of changes that waste category from a high moisture content waste to one that is not a high moisture content waste, which is more, which the landfills like to have. It's easier for them to manage. So we've talked about this. It's a ways out there, but it is in our biosolids management plan.
Good evening, councils, members. Christian Tar, Utilities Maintenance Manager. On page 150, you'll see the wastewater treatment plant service water system upgrade. As Aaron discussed, we have two things at the wastewater plant. We process the material, get rid of the sludge, and then we discharge a clean water product into the river. What is used there, or how it's used, is we actually take that water and use it for services throughout the facility, like wash down procedures or mixing with chemicals. Anything that non-potable water could be used for is to, save that resource. The equipment we use is a pumping system and a hydroaccumulator tank. That is original to the facility at 40 years old. Maintenance on the equipment and parts availability is becoming a little harder for us, and we're looking to update that equipment with the newer utilities, which have more reliability and would certainly show an energy savings compared to the antiquated stuff that we currently have. On the next page, 154, is the wastewater treatment plant HVAC replacement project. If you've been down there, you can certainly attest to the fact that the environment is a little outside of the normal industrial environment. And we have HVAC systems that handle air exchanges. There's a 10-state standards permit that says you have to have X amount of cubic feet evacuated from a premise that is occupied every hour. I'm not sure of the exact cubic foot, but it's a pretty significant amount. So these units actually exchange that air and condition it. They will heat it and they will cool it. And the average expected life on a commercial unit is about 15 years. We do have commercial units, but again, it's not your typical environment. So this project goes through fiscal year 25, 29, and then 31, and replaces 3 units that operate at the wastewater treatment facility that are running out of time.
Jumping over to page 155, wastewater treatment plant tank repair program. So over the past years, the city has, invested a lot of funds into its wastewater treatment plant. We've updated numerous mechanical pieces of equipment, our electrical systems. But one of the things that we need to continue to maintain is our concrete infrastructure, such as the tank that you see in the picture, which is a clarifier. It's about 95 foot in diameter, 12 feet deep, and holds around 650,000 gallons of water. Basically, what we need to do is continue to maintain those clarifiers and tanks that we have at the plant to maintain their useful life. That includes, recoating the tanks, recoating that metal infrastructure that you see inside of the tank. And so this is a program that allows us to do a little bit of maintenance on different pieces of infrastructure over time.
Page 156 is the wastewater treatment plant building renovation and demolition program. The wastewater treatment plant at one point had a composting process. And if you look in the picture, you can see the area where that process happened. The out-of-service building that you see is no longer really safe to store materials and has almost like a false floor in it that's kind of deteriorated, so we kind of have vacated that entire building. We also have an area that isn't shown on this picture that is a 21 by 21 footprint for an old chemical storage tank. It's a perfect opportunity to utilize that as the foundation of a 21 by 21 cold storage facility. As Aaron spoke, we get new equipment, new materials, the opportunity to utilize that footprint to actually have exterior storage that isn't exposed to the elements would be fantastic, and that's 2026. 2028, we'd look at demolishing that building completely so that that hazard is out of the way. And then in 2030, again being from 1985, we would be looking at renovations to the men's and the women's facilities, including the bathroom, showers, and locker rooms.
157, laboratory and instrumentation and equipment replacement program, and this is split between water. So you'll see 105,000 budget in fiscal year 27. When we go to water, you'll see that same number. So laboratory staff perform some technical and analytical analysis at the plant, and they use sophisticated equipment to do so. This project replaces an atomic absorption spectrophotometer, which is due for replacement in fiscal year 27. This project budgets for a replacement piece of equipment. It's ICPMS, and this is a little bit different than an AA machine, but in the end, what it's doing is analyzing for low-level metals. The laboratory does analysis for both the drinking water side of the house as well as the wastewater and its compliance permit. So that is what this piece of equipment is budgeted for.
Wastewater treatment plant clarifier equipment replacement project. So the clarifier is just a big tank in the ground, and in the center of it, it has a really large planetary drive with a motor that operates to spin the mechanisms to be part of the process. Currently at the facility, we still have one original piece of equipment, one original planetary drive from 1985 that is in need of replacement. That would be fiscal year 26. And then inside of those tanks are baffles and weirs. They kind of control any solids from coming out of the water and control the flow of water out of the tank. Their actual original design was made of aluminum. The wastewater treatment plant has a permit that has an aluminum limits requirement. It's pitted, it's deteriorating, and the intent in 2028 is to replace 2 of them in our secondary clarifiers with a fiberglass composite material that would actually help to benefit the future permit regulations that we have.
Right on to 159, fiber optic replacement project. So this replaces the original fiber from City Hall to the wastewater treatment plant. I'm not exactly sure the age. I think it went in the late 90s or early 2000s, but it is approaching the end of its useful life. And to ensure reliable communications and have access to the city's network, we are putting a project in there to go ahead and replace that. It's about 5 miles long. This will, the cost for that in fiscal year 27 will also be equally split with the airport, since the airport's on the way to the wastewater treatment plant. So not a very exciting project, but a necessary one. And then in fiscal year 29, the fiber optic network around the wastewater treatment plant, which allows our SCADA systems to communicate with our equipment and our outbuildings, is due for replacement, and fiscal year 29 funds approximately 3,000 feet of new fiber optic cable throughout the plant.
Page 160 is the wastewater treatment plant roof replacement project. So in 2022, we actually completed a project on the entire main building that included upgrading the insulation, a new adhesive roof system, and then a safety railing around the perimeter of the building. Not included in that plan was a smaller section over the maintenance shop and over our receiving bay. And that will need to get done. It kind of was pulled away based off of what we were looking at in the future with the sludge dryer. So we kind of held off on that, not knowing where the footprint of that future project could go. Then we have page 161 is the wastewater treatment plant septage pump replacement project. This is pushed way out until 31. These are air-operated style pumps that we use to convey septage that is discharged at the wastewater plant. The units that we have still operate, but again, these are original 1985 pieces of equipment. They're very unintelligent, for a lesser term. Parts are available, but noting that that the septage is a revenue source for the city. By that point, they should be updated to a newer technology.
Moving along to page 162, Martel Court bypass project. So you've probably heard about this many times now, but the Martel Court pump station is the heartbeat of our collection system. It conveys all the wastewater from the city of Keene and portions of Marlboro to the wastewater treatment plant. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The station is designed for peak flows up to 21 million gallons, but it, as I said earlier, conveys about 3 million gallons a day on average. In 2021, and this is, by the way, a new project, this was not budgeted for previously, and it's kind of because of what happened in July. So what you're seeing there in that picture, in July of 2023, that's a 30-inch diameter pipe in that discharge knife gate on the effluent force main. So that means as it's already gone through the pumping system and it's on its way out the station and headed toward the plant, that the packing and the seals on that knife gate failed, pouring water into that station. And down below that pipe is where our pumping equipment is and where our motors are. So basically, long story short, there's no way for us to fix it. The station was not originally designed with a bypass. So the only way for us to really go ahead and make that repair is to put in a permanent bypass. And of course, if anybody's seen, the station or been down there or looked at a map, the geographical location is not really ideal. It's right on the corner of 2 rivers as they kind of come together. And so if it was in a different location, it may be easier because we may be able to put a bypass connection right on the backside of the station and tie into the force main there. But because it's located so close to the river, we actually have to put this bypass piping system in, and we have to jack a new pipe under the river, connecting it to the force main kind of further down, where we can there, get to a point where we can excavate, put in some valves, and do our plumbing work. Then we would have the bypass pumping system, which would allow us to take the station off so we can make the necessary repairs that we just can't do that we're not able to do right now. So it is an expensive project, but we do need to do these repairs. And one of the things that we're planning on doing as part of this project is also putting the plumbing connections in for an additional force main to the wastewater plant. And again, as you've heard me talk about before, there's only one pipe that leads from the station to the plant. It's 40 years old, can never be taken offline for maintenance. We do have a project coming up, working with Don and the engineering team to evaluate the condition of that force main, but at some point, there is going to be the need for an additional force main from the station to the wastewater plant. And this project will at least allow for those connections to start happening. We did have 2 trains that we were kind of thinking of, as far as how to attack this repair, and we were thinking that we could do a temporary bypass that would allow us to at least go ahead and do the repairs that we need to do. But again, given the location of the river and the force main and this piece of infrastructure, we worked with a consultant, we started the design, but when we got the cost estimates, we needed to put a bridge over the river, a pipe over that bridge, doing all this tie-in work. It was about $1.8 million was a construction estimate for a temporary bypass, and none of that infrastructure would remain once the repairs have been made, and then we would still have to do the permanent bypass anyway. So we pivoted directions, and we're just going to go ahead and plow through with the permanent bypass solution.
Christian, you fixed it.
Temporarily. Yeah.
This draft's look, yeah.
It's not my best piece of work, but I have some faith in it.
So if we're ready to move on to page 163, that's the chemical feed system upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant project. And what you're viewing there is some chemical totes with 25% sodium hydroxide in them. And the hut next to it is where we keep our chemical feed pump. And we add 25% sodium hydroxide to the stream, to the wastewater plant effluent prior to discharge in order to comply with our discharge permit's pH limit. So we have a limit. We can't go any below 6.5. This chemical addition allows us to maintain compliance with our permit. We tried this out as a new, lesser expensive option than sodium bicarbonate, which we will still use in times of extreme high flows. This worked, but we would like to make this a little bit more permanent solution. Obviously, if there's 2 or 3 feet of snow around this, it's challenging. Also, while 25% sodium hydroxide has a lower freezing temperature than water, when it gets to be around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, this stuff starts to gel up and makes pumping a little bit difficult. So we would like to make this permanent. I've got a project in here in fiscal year 31 to create a construct a building that would have bulk tanks. And kind of as a side benefit to doing that, we would get a better price on bulk deliveries versus getting deliveries in these totes. So we get weekly deliveries of these totes, and if we were to have bulk storage, that could go down to about monthly. And I put some pricing differences there, the bulk price versus what the tote price is.
Page 164, Black Brook wastewater pump station upgrade. So in the late 90s, the Black Brook Industrial Park was put online, the wastewater pump station was put online, and obviously since the 90s, we've seen quite a bit of expansion in that area. Major living expansion, some industrial laundering facilities have put a higher stress on that station. Original installation, we were seeing about 7,000 gallons a day of wastewater transferred through there. Upon the installation of people's linen in the living area, that is now at about 70 to 80,000 gallons a day. There's a lot more non-flushable materials coming into the station. We have a lot of daily maintenance and check-ins to make sure things are continuing to operate without having any type of backup issues. And we are looking to update that to a more current system that would help alleviate us of some of that. Moving even further forward, the three major pump stations for our wastewater, which are Bradco, Farmstead, and Court Street, are hitting the end of their expected life. They are usable, but future CIP projects would see those underground can stations brought up above grade and newer pumping systems put in as well.
Jumping over to 165, wastewater plant grit removal clamshell. So what you're seeing in that picture is kind of a giant version of the claw game that you see at the arcade, except going for cool prizes, you're going for some wastewater grit. So basically, the first stage of treatment at the wastewater plant is to remove inorganic sand and grit. And we have two grit chambers. They're 40,000 gallon rectangular tanks that we use to do that. So we slow the velocity down, the heavy inorganic material settles out, organic material continues on for treatment. The way it was designed, and this is the apparatus that we have, is every so often those tanks need to be degritted, and that clamshell goes up on a hoist apparatus, and the guys lower it down and they scoop it up, and it goes out of the building, and they dump it into a dump truck, and then we put it up on the pad to dewater before it gets hauled away and disposed of at Waste Management's landfill. This is original piece of equipment. It's just worn out. It's seen 40 years of use. And so we have a project in there, fiscal year 26, for $80,000 to replace it.
Wastewater.
Oh, there's a
Sorry,
question.
I actually have one on this one. Just on that clamshell, is there an opportunity in that process to use the sludge dryer that we have budgeted further out to dewater that material and potentially save money? I'm trying to help your ROI on the sludge dryer because I know that's a 30-year return. And
No, the grit doesn't make it that far in the process. So grit, the sludge dryer is just handling the organic material. This is all inorganic sand, and it dries out pretty thoroughly. But the answer is no.
okay, I was hopeful there was a way to loop it back through to dry it out, but if not, I was trying to help.
Wastewater treatment plant sludge, it should be sludge pump replacement project. These are the two pumps that feed the screw presses at the wastewater plant for the sludge process. Looking in fiscal year 30, kind of tied in with that dryer project, there may be the need to change the volume of flow or how we process the sludge through the screw presses when the dryer comes around. So this replaces those based off of what the new study with the sludge dryer would find.
Page 167, and our final project here in the sewer fund is wastewater plant UV lamp replacement program. So the wastewater plant disinfects its wastewater before it's discharged to the river to meet compliance with its discharge permit for E. coli bacteria using UV disinfection techniques. Some plants use chlorine. The city of Keene used to use chlorine when the plant first came online. So with chlorine, when you chlorinate, you have to give it contact time for it to work, but then you also have to dechlorinate it before it could go out to the river. So this is a process that is widely used in the industry. We invested in 2013 in a new UV system. The system consists of around 240 lamps that need to be replaced every year. And this is the cost to replace the lamps, and you'll see it reoccurs every 5 years. And it also allows us to contract with the manufacturer's tech support so that we can do a pretty extensive maintenance on this equipment when we do these lamp replacements. Great, thank you. Going to move right on to water. So, similar kind of, whole process here with the CIP. Basically, what we are doing through this whole CIP, whether it's sewer or water, is really, maintaining, repairing, and replacing the infrastructure that we have. The water system consists of surface water reservoirs, groundwater wells, around 100 miles of distribution pipe, 900 or so hydrants, a couple thousand valves, treatment plant, 6 water storage tanks, 6 booster stations. So what we're really doing, like we did in sewer, is really just maintaining the assets that we have and keeping things in good working order. The same team will be presenting as well. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to kick off on page 180 with the 3 million gallon storage tank repair project. Everyone's seen this tank if you've lived in Keene long enough and you ever driven up behind Roxbury or Robin Hood Park up on Upper Roxbury Road. This is a 1962 welded steel storage tank, and like I said, it holds 3 million gallons of water. It's used obviously to supply water and pressure and fire storage for the residents of the city of Keene. In 2018, we had a pretty extensive evaluation done to whether we should either repair or replace this tank. And through that evaluation, I found that the steel's in good condition and still has a lot of value. And it does make sense to go ahead and repair this piece of infrastructure. And the majority of the work is basically coating it on the inside and out. It's just a large piece of infrastructure, and it's just an expensive project to do. And it happens around every 25 years. So this was last coated in the late 1990s, and it's due for coating now. We have approximately $3 million budgeted in a previous, I think it's in fiscal year 23 or 24, but we knew with the market and how much that's changed, we believe we needed to add in additional funds to make sure we had enough budgeted to complete the project. Moving on to the Chapman Road storage tank. This is a smaller tank. It's 200,000 gallons. It was installed in the early 1990s. It's a precast concrete storage tank. But in the project that we have in fiscal year 28 funds the interior and exterior refurbishment of the tank, as well as a safety cable system on the dome. Periodically, even though it's a cementous tank, the interior walls need to be recoated, and just fixing any exterior deficiencies with the tank. It's overall in good shape, but it just needs a little bit of a tune-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last time you're going to hear from me tonight, I promise. In fact, I'm not even going to sit down. The last project I'm going to talk about is the water distribution program, water distro improvements program. This is sort of like the third leg of our three-legged underground utility the tripod, if you will. Just like I said, the sewer improvements program was a corollary to the stormwater resiliency. This too is the same sort of thing. It's paying for those like large, massive water main replacement projects where there's capacity concerns, like we don't have enough capacity in the existing condition, or the pipe is so far gone that it really has to be fully replaced. You may recall a few years ago we did some experimentation with a process for lining water mains, and I won't say that experiment was a failure. We got the project done, and that water main that we lined, actually a couple of them, Ellis Court and Carpenter Street, is still in service. It's, it's holding. But I will say that the cost savings of doing that process compared to the inconvenience that it rendered to our customers, it just wasn't a good value, and it wasn't a good fit for our biggest need, which is sort of the distribution mains that are in neighborhoods, right? It may still be something that we look at when we try to, for example, address or rehab the raw water main that goes all the way from Roxbury down to the water plant. It doesn't have any valves and fittings, and it doesn't have a lot of side branches or service connections. That may be a very good application for a lining process, but that lining process didn't really have a good bang for the buck in the neighborhoods where we've got valves and fittings, every 50 feet. I'm still waiting for Elon Musk to invent a good solution for replacing or rehabbing water mains without digging up the street, but until that happens, this is the best we got. I will point out that, this is a pretty big investment, right? It's $10 million over the course of 7 years in the CIP. And in that time, we'll replace about 4 miles of our 102 miles of water main. And I don't want to, undersell that. It's an impressive investment. Unfortunately, we're catching up with 80, 90 years of underinvestment in this infrastructure. And realistically, these pipes have a service life of, between 80 and 120 years, depending on the vintage of pipe and the manufacturer and the age. So I don't think we're where we need to be yet. At some point, we're probably going to need to invest more in this particular area. That's not, and I don't want to sounding grateful for the level of investment that the community is currently making. But it is a concern. We're not replacing it at the same rate that these water mains are deteriorating. So that's my sort of word of caution. But that said, over the next 3 years, 25, 26, 27, the project is again focused on the downtown water mains, and we will be replacing all of the water mains downtown as part of that program. Thank you.
You gonna keep your promise?
Maybe.
So next on page 184, we have the Lower Winchester Street Reconstruction Water Infrastructure Support. This is a one-time project that funds the replacement of the 12-inch ductile iron water main from Route 101 south to the town line. This water main's there in 1970. It's not at the end of the life it should get, between 80 and 120 years, but we've been on several breaks there over the past couple of years. We were just there last month, actually, in front of Sullivan Tire. This pipe seems to have some defects in it, and we're seeing severe corrosion on it. So while we're doing this project, we've decided to go ahead and replace this just to avoid future breaks on that brand-new stretch of road. On page 185, Water Utility Work Bridges Program. This project was specifically added to the water infrastructure, this project specifically addresses the water infrastructure associated with Maple Ave Bridge over Black Brook. This work is scheduled for fiscal year 30. This is 1949 cast iron universal pipe. Page 186, Water Valve Replacement Program. This ongoing program focuses on improving the efficiency and reliability of the city's water distribution system by systematically replacing gate valves. These gate valves allow us to isolate water mains during emergency repairs, perform routine maintenance on the distribution system, like hydrant replacements. We can shut hydrants down with these valves, if a vehicle strikes them. And also, they're a tool in our directional flushing program. We can manipulate the direction of water the way we want it to move through the mains by using these valves. The US EPA estimates that properly maintained distribution valves have an expected useful life of 35 to 40 years. About 72% of our valves, of our 3,000 valves, have been in service for more than 40 years. In addition, 5% of these valves have been in service more than 100 years. Operating older valves does pose some challenges. there's leakage upon operation, excessive force requirements, like 2 guys swinging on a valve, and that sometimes can be a straight up failure. When these valves fail once in a while, they do fail in the closed position, and that may temporarily provide a lower available fire flow in the neighborhood until that valve is replaced. So identification of replacement of these valves is done during our biannual directional flushing. We are out turning these valves. We identify which ones are not working properly, and they get added to the list for this ongoing program. So the fiscal year 25 CIP funds, $110,000 for gate valve replacement. Fiscal year 26, $115,000. Are there any questions? Page 187, bulk water fill station. The city currently sells bulk water from a hydrant at 350 Marlborough Street. Access to this hydrant is very limited. It's normal business hours is actually kept locked up. So from 7 to 3, pool haulers can go down there, request the key, we'll unlock it, they can fill up. And it's also really severely limited by the amount of time in the year we can keep that hydrant going. It requires a backflow device. So if a water main were to break while a tanker were filling, the water from that tanker is not going to go back into the distribution system. That device is going to open and dump that. It's just a protection device. We can't leave that out during the months of freezing weather. It'll freeze and crack and break and will not work properly. So this project funds a self-service bulk water station that will allow customers to purchase water 24/7, 365. The city currently generates about $6,000 a year selling bulk water. With the new station and ease of accessibility, we're hoping this number, will increase as a extra funding source for the water fund.
Yeah, we're also evaluating a different fee structure for this bulk water filling station. Currently we're selling at 2021 price was $5.06 for 750 gallons. So we are looking at, because it's going to have more accessibility, we're hoping that looks like it's going to be able to accept credit card instead of just for large haulers, campers that are looking for potable water. We'll also be able to use this station, and like I said, we're still evaluating a different type of fee structure versus just a very basic price. Thank you, Ben.
Just 1 second on that. I'm curious, I would be curious if to moving it up, if you could make more money sooner, right? If it seems like one that would, if it's actually gonna.
Well, we did that intentionally because, as Don spoke earlier, there's going to be some reconstruction of that 350 parking lot and traffic pattern. So as we're going to be increasing the traffic with RVs and haulers, we want to make sure that that all works together, and that's why we put it there.
I should have known you guys thought through why that was at that point.
You and Dan?
Thank you.
Don.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Hello again, Brett Rusnock. I had the pleasure of working with Aaron, Ben, and Dawn in 2018 to rebuild Babbage Reservoir Dam, and in 2021 to rebuild the Woodward Pond Dam. And this program is similar to the general fund dam maintenance program that we introduced. And this one is specifically focused on the 2 dams that serve water supply purposes for the city. When we were rebuilding Babbage Dam in 2018, we identified some leaks in the intake pipe for that dam, and those were things that we did not know about when we were doing the design, and unfortunately were not included in that project. So we've identified that as a potential project for the future years in 2030 and 31. Another potential project is the access road improvements for the raw water main from Babbage Dam. There's a section that is in a wetland area that needs to be improved with permitting, culverts, and a significant amount of erosion-resistant material. And then the third project that we've identified is the Woodward Pond Dam access road improvements. And unfortunately, that project the Woodward Dam is at the bottom of a very steep hill. It's a Class 6 road in the town of Roxbury. And it's very difficult to access and maintain that road, particularly in the winter. There's drainage issues, there's high groundwater, and relatively poor drainage on that road. And so one of the potential projects is doing a significant amount of access road improvements to reach Woodward Pond Dam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one might be for the city manager. So this one and the bridge-related kind of capital maintenance program, I'm trying to phrase this in a nice way. Given the state's tendency to fund based on need, I'm hesitant to create these types of programs that fund ongoing maintenance because that'll be 100% local versus state participation if it's need-based. I would rather not say, let's not invest and wait for the state to fix it, but is there something we can do to get the state to incentivize programs that are more maintenance-based? I don't know because it's the same thing on this one versus the other one of, if we just wait till it fails, they'll pay for it. That's maybe, but you know what I mean? Like, that's not a good practice, and I was trying not to say that way, but,
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. I think for this one, these access roads, the state's never going to fund, but I think that there are other opportunities for us to advocate for more state funding for maintenance type projects, and I think that's what Don was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And we certainly can continue to do that. Oh, he wants to get back on his soapbox. Look what you did.
I can't
These are
not, sorry.
guys, you're all alike.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that I've gotten on my soapbox with the Gasset to push this. I don't think that's going to get it done. I think that eventually this is going to require legislative action at the state level to address this municipal need. And I know that we've talked about right now the state is accepting legislative action request, I think, proposal request.
So NHMA is going through their process, so the New Hampshire Municipal Association is going through their process where municipalities can submit concepts, not the whole language in terms of a proposed bill, but language of things that we'd like to change. And that's really the first place to start. And then you can get broader support from other municipalities across the state, and including some advocacy from NHMA. And so department heads right now are looking at what sorts of things we might want to advocate for. It's a 2-year process, but it is the start.
Yeah. And one of the ones that I'd like to put forward would be a state, what I'm going to call the state pink list. The bridges that aren't quite on the red listed yet, but they need to be preserved. DOT, God bless them, they have a limited budget and they're prioritizing it. I think until the legislature pushes them to move in this direction and put some money behind it, they're not going to take it on themselves.
I think of it more in I'd rather they incentivize us to do the right thing and maintain them ourselves than not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
My concern on some of this stuff going forward for some of us older people that remember the late 70s and early 80s, and then in the 90s, and then 2008, there comes a time where the federal government just clamps down on discretionary funding. A few years ago, discretionary funding was 35% of the budget. Now it's 27% of the budget, and even more is going to be sucked up with the interest payments. And so I just think it's good policy to not start counting on what's been going on. It's kind of like we had a drug dealer for the last 3 or 4 years giving money out all over the place, and states and other, states have cut revenue sources because they didn't need all the revenue sources. And spending 12 years up at the State House, they're not going to turn them back on. And a lot of us communities are going to be stuck. And when I first came on the city council, Tom, too, and one of the big complaints is you guys are not doing anything about the infrastructure. When the money stopped from the state, what did we do? We stopped paying for infrastructure upgrades and stuff like that. And I think we need, like you said, we need to be proactive, and if we can't count on someone else to help us, we can't use that as an excuse not to do it for ourselves, like we did in the 1990s and early 2000s, which, as a result, you're bringing these high-cost projects up to us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
What do you keep shaking your head for?
All right. Page 189 is energy. That better?
Yeah.
Perfect. Emergency generator replacement program. We've done a lot to ensure that we have adequate emergency power at most of our stations, water and wastewater included. And this just kind of continues to upgrade those assets as they become older. So in fiscal year 28 at the water treatment facility, this would fund the replacement of the 250 kW generator that is existing now. At the point where it comes into the CIP, it'll be 30 years old and in need of updating. In 3031, we look at a 65 kW generator that is currently at the Blackbrook Water Booster Station. Again, that's from 1996 and will be 35 years old at its time of replacement. And both of these pieces of equipment would give you the opportunity to run both of those facilities at full capacity for a duration of time.
On page 190, it's the Water Treatment Facility Instrumentation Replacement and Upgrade Program. So the water treatment facility, our groundwater wells, storage tank, pump stations are all equipped with online monitoring equipment that allows us to monitor the process 24/7. And this project replaces 8 online turbidimeters in fiscal year 25 and a total organic carbon analyzer in fiscal year 28.
Page 191, Water Treatment Facility Valve and Actuator Replacement Upgrade Program. At the water plant, we have 3 filter units which process our water, and each of those units' functions, start, stop, cleaning functions, are all done with butterfly valves that are pneumatically actuated. So we actually use compressed air to open and compressed air to close these valves. Every one there is original, and it is quite a wasteful expenditure. As you can see, 50% of the applied energy that we use to operate this system is lost. So in fiscal year 26, what we're looking to do is replace the actual butterfly valves with electronic actuators that would use just regular electricity to operate. 26, we do the first unit in assorted programming, refine it, get all the bugs worked out. 28, the next unit, and then 30, the last unit at the water plant. What that would do is be a pretty significant amount of energy savings by not having to use compressed air, and the accuracy with the electronic equipment inevitably would give you a better finished product and more accuracy with running the treatment facility. Water treatment facility wastegate actuators. Those are, again, some electronic actuators that once we have a cleaning function on one of the filter units, which is either a flush or a backwash, that water is kind of expelled into a tank, and the tanks are isolated with 2 gate valves. Once one reaches capacity, the gate closes, and then the other one opens to receive the material. We recycle that material to a certain depth, and then we waste the rest of the material. This project in 28 is simply replacing the actuators which were having a problem trying to keep up with finding parts and availability to keep them operating. They currently do work, but they're becoming outdated, and those 2 pieces of equipment would be replaced.
I would just like to add that, the water treatment facility was constructed in 1993 and came online as well that same year. And it is, 30 years old, so we're starting to see now that this equipment is needing maintenance, repairs, and replacement.
Page 193, water treatment, HVAC, and air conditioning units. As Aaron just described, these are two pieces of equipment from 1993. In fiscal year '27, we're looking for a replacement of the air conditioning system, which operates the control room. That's solely to keep it tempered in the summer. And then in '29, it would be a replacement of the heating HVAC system, which is also an original piece. Water pump repair and replacement program. Obviously, we use gravity to send it out to the customers, but we do have a lot of pumps that we utilize in the process as well. In '26, we have a backwash pump, which is part of the cleaning process at the water plant. It's still serviceable, but again, it hasn't been refurbished or worked on since it was initially put in. 2 years ago, we did do a repair on the opposite unit, so we have two of them for the redundancy. And it's operating fine. Technicians that came in and did some work for us said we can expect 15 to 20 years out of the equipment we did the refurbishment to. So we're kind of considering 15 to 20 years on the next one that we do. In '28, just down below the water plant is the Chapman Road Pump Station. Ironically, they're exactly the same design pumps as what the wastewater, as what the backwash pumps are, just a little bit smaller. So again, those specialists told us if we do these, refurbishments to that equipment, we should have an expected life cycle on that as well. And then year 30, there was a water supply master plan that was done a few years back that noted that the Blackbrook Booster Station pumps were undersized to meet future expansion. And what would happen in 30 is we would fund to upgrade the pumps in that station. Piping is adequate, all the other infrastructure is adequate, but the size of the pumps, the horsepower, and the flow capacity would be changed in 30. Wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant, excuse me. So we have two regenerative blowers. How that works is we actually take this air and flush it up through the water to remove organics and materials that are bad, and that's what kind of washes into the waste tank after the cleaning function. They're original, again, to the facility. Both units have been serviced by technicians, new bearings, basically a big motor with two huge fans on the end of it, extremely loud and horribly inefficient in the way they operate. In 2026, this money is kind of going to replace with a little bit more updated equipment with a higher level of reliability and more energy efficiency.
Page 196, Wellfield Upgrade Program. We had a pretty extensive presentation on the water supply master plan and well evaluation that we did and completed in 2023. Out at Court Street, we have 3 groundwater wells and a corrosion control facility. Those date from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that infrastructure. So this project refurbishes and upgrades the Court Street well facility. I do understand that it's an expensive project, but this is a valuable water source for the city of Keene. This particular well field can produce approximately 1.5 million gallons of water a day. The infrastructure is old, the mechanical, the pumping equipment, the chemical feed equipment, and the buildings need work. And that brings us to our last project for the Water Fund, which is the other half of the analytical equipment for the laboratory that we already discussed during the sewer fund portion. And with that, my team and I thank you for your time and listening to all those projects. And if there's any remaining questions, we're happy to answer those as well.
Aaron, while you get these two fellas here that they carry a lot of work for you,
They certainly do, and I appreciate them.
why don't you tell folks a little bit about their history? Because I think they've been around water and sewer and highway for a long time in some way or another.
Yeah, sure. I mean, they could probably describe themselves better than I can, but Christian has been with the city for 15 years, 16?
16 years.
16 years. He started in the water and sewer department, working on collection, the sewer collection system and water distribution system. And I can't remember the exact year, but he did apply for the utilities maintenance job down at the wastewater plant 10 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
About 10 years ago, and he worked his way up through foreman and did a great job there, and all the way up to the utilities maintenance manager. So very talented, very knowledgeable in mechanical and electrical equipment. So very glad to have him on the team. Ben Crowder has also been with the city for 15 or 16 years. Some may recognize the name. Ben's father worked for the city in the engineering department for a long time. Ben also started with the water and sewer division. He and Chris were actually co-workers and worked together as a team. Ben took an interest in the water treatment facility and was moved up there to kind of fill in some voids that we had, and was able to get his water licenses, and was eventually promoted to the water treatment facility manager. Ben is the primary operator for the water system, so he holds the water treatment facility and the distribution license that's required by the state. He's considered the primary water operator in the eyes of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And with our most recent vacancy for the operations manager, previously held by Chris Pelletier, you may have remember him. He was here for a short period of time before moving on. Ben took an interest, again, had the experience. So we promoted Ben to the water and sewer operations manager in charge of the water treatment facility and the collection and distribution system.
Thank you. Nice job.
Thank you.
Somebody asked
I was asking who you made mad to go last.
Junior department head, so I figured I'd take a hit for the team, so. And there were some complaints I took up too much time at the Saturday meeting, so I thought I owed it to the crowd, so. I was also hoping to be a little more silent and I could get by with what I'm saying this evening as well, so we'll see how that goes.
Page 33.
I'm gonna start actually on 39 with apparatus replacement. I told you I was gonna get you here. I tried, it didn't work. There you go, thank you. Okay, so apparatus replacement program. It looks a lot different, so I'm gonna spend a little time on this one, and hopefully it's the biggest part of the presentation, and we can move along on the rest of it. So, long story short, our fleet at its core is largely based off of fire department that does not exist anymore. A long time ago, when we had a working fire, you would get 25 or 30 call members to come back and they'd come and pick up fire trucks. So for a department our size, we have a lot of fire trucks. And whether we're using them or not, they cost money even if they're just sitting there. So we took a look at our current use, how many, the mileage of each truck on an annual basis, how many miles each truck travels, maintenance repair costs, and kind of pulled it all together to find a way to enhance the quality of the apparatus, reducing our overall costs, and also reducing the size of the fleet. An important factor in this, and it'll also come up again when we talk about durable medical equipment, is over time, as we have picked up items off of grants, they never made it onto the CIP, and that has caused us quite a few problems. So on this year's CIP, we added our rigid hull boat, our rescue boat, our hazmat trailer, and a technical rescue trailer. The hazmat trailer becomes important because part of our apparatus replacement proposal is that we get rid of it by rearranging some of our fire apparatus. A long time ago on my other job, I was thrown into a fleet that was dramatically broken, and did a lot of research on it, worked with my then fleet manager, and did a lot of good work. So some pretty big takeaways I had from that work. And one of the ways you measure your fleet, or one of the important measures of the fleet, is based on the quality of your spare apparatus. So broadly speaking, if your spare apparatus is not doing well, neither is your fleet. And that's certainly an issue we have now with our spare engine. It is likely one of the most expensive fire trucks per mile in the North America. So in the end, we're probably going to end up just getting rid of that one, and I think we can do that very safely. And the other part also that is a player here is that as soon as you replace a piece of apparatus on an emergency basis, it throws everything off. So we took all those factors together and took a whole new look as to how we can realign our fleet, and that's what we did here. So always looking for a way to measure our fire apparatus. When does it need to be replaced? How much does it cost us on an annual basis? And there's not a lot of good instruments out there to measure. There's an old standard people used to use, like 20 years for an engine and 25 years for a ladder truck, and that has dramatically changed. So this is a measurement instrument that is based off of a public work measurement instrument that's been adopted by the fire service. And I've used it before, and it holds up. It makes a lot of sense. So basically, you look at each apparatus individually, and you measure its age, how many miles it has, its type of service, is it heavy-duty service or light-duty service, its reliability, which is based upon how many times it's in the shop or breaks down, the maintenance and repair cost, which is the price of repairs is balanced against the truck's original purchase price, and then the overall condition. So you get a score for each truck, and it comes out to a total. And if it's if it's green, it's good, right? If it's yellow, between 23 and 27 points, as you can see in the top left corner there, it should be considered for replacement. And if it's in the red, it's no good. And this holds up to what we see now. So I unfortunately clipped off the totals in the bottom. But right, engine 1, which is our primary engine out of Central, right, it scores out at a 24.5. Which is in the zone for considering a replacement. Engine 2, which is an older spare, that is in the red at 28.7. And ladder 2, which is the primary response apparatus of the West Station, scores out at a 20.5, which is getting close to consideration for replacement. So engine 1 and ladder 2 are our primary response apparatus out of Central and West respectively, and they're about 2 years apart in age and share similar mileage. So when we really get in trouble is if you're replacing 2 trucks like that in the same budget year or 2, so you have a huge peak in replacement costs. So we try to find, and think we're very successful in resetting the replacement cycle so we can replace apparatus at a pace that is acceptable or achievable, really. So if we were to keep engine 1 as current, as the frontline apparatus out of Central, and we take the average mileage per year and trend out conservatively what the maintenance cost will be and what the mileage will be over time. When you get into 2026, it's replacement time, consideration of replacement time. So this year, engine 1, we're about $30,000 in repairs, and particularly a bad year. I had some trouble with it, right? But $30,000 in repair. I think our maintenance budget for that's like $78,000, so that's like 38% of a repair budget on one truck. And over time, that's not due for replacement for many years. Over time, that's going to get much more expensive. And as that truck breaks down more, we become more heavily reliant on our spare truck, which proves out the theorem that if your spare apparatus is not good, you're really in trouble. Same thing with ladder 2. If we take the same trending of mileage per year and we plot out what it's going to look like for cost over time, very soon into that, it's also due for replacement. So this next slide is probably the most important one, so I'll focus on it for a little bit. So the top of it is if we stay where we are now. So engine 1, again, primary out of Central. Engine 2 is our spare. Ladder 2 is out of the West Station. The tower ladder is assigned to Central. It's a beautiful truck. It's a 2020. Only has like 4,000 miles on it. It's in great shape. We just received a brand new tanker, which replaced a 20-plus-year-old tanker. And the rescue becomes important because instead of purchasing a new rescue, we're going to refurb this one, which really makes a lot of sense and is the primary facet of our ability to reset what is looming as some massive expenditures all in the same few years. So the proposal, which is on the bottom one, is we're going to purchase in 26 a new engine. And that is on the list at 1.3 million. And that engine will have a lot of capacity to carry some rescue equipment. So I'll speak to that in a moment. Well, that becomes very important. The rescue truck, instead of replacing it, it was in the CIP for $760,000. In lieu of replacing it, our proposal is to refurb it. And the refurbishment for that is like it's on the bottom slide there, $524,000. I'm never a huge fan of refurbing apparatus. Very few times does it work to our favor. Uniquely, the rescue truck does. It's a great truck. Whoever designed it originally did a great job. Mechanically, it's in great shape. And to replace that in kind would be well over $1 million. Our internal assessment and the assessment from original manufacturers for that refurbishment price, we easily get another 15 years out of it. So that is, I think, a wise move, and again, becomes very important as resetting our overall replacement cycle. From there, it makes sense to take ladder 2, which is out west, and move it back to central as a spare, which allows us to keep 2 ladders, which we need 2 ladders. At that point, we can get rid of engine 1. It's a business decision at that point. I think it makes sense at that point, but getting rid of engine 2 is vital. And the rescue truck, again, refurb comes back. So with a new engine and with the refurbishment of the rescue truck, we can take that hazmat trailer, and get rid of it. We can get all that equipment onto either one of those apparatus. And that 1989 hazmat trailer, which never appeared in the CIP, which conservatively we need to replace that $250,000, we just don't need anymore. So in the end, we go from 7 large capital apparatus down to 5. And more importantly, as you move forward, the replacement cycle comes for a new truck every 4 or 5 years, depending how you look at it, versus having a whole pile of trucks at once. So to prove out the value of taking the tower ladder and moving out west, this is what, I apologize, I'm a slide ahead. So ladder 2, if we move it to a spare, which is very important, right? We preserve the length of that for a long time. So our projection is if we keep it in service front line, right around 2028, 2027, depending, it's pretty close, it'd probably need to be replaced. But if you put it as a spare, it reduces its mileage by about 75%, and we can preserve that truck for a much longer time, which again fits very well into our longer apparatus replacement cycle. And the tower ladder, come on, we benefit from that because currently it has 4,000 miles on it. It's in great shape. So if we put that out west and it keeps the same mileage, again, we get a long life out of that. So that's the proposal on the fleet replacement program. I know it's a lot and a little confusing, so I'll probably have some questions. None?
I liked it a lot. Thank you. That was fun.
All right. It's no wastewater stuff, but we do okay. So, and I'd also point out that the rescue refurbishment is just $100,000 more than a public restroom. So that's a good comparator. So thank you for that, Don. The advantages of going last. And the fleet replacement again, it will come up again. All the stuff really will again on operational budget because it cannot be understated how much our capital investments, our capital purchases impact our operating budget, right? And we are being crushed by apparatus repair replacement costs right now. And that will certainly support that. So when we do our operating budget, it will certainly speak to that again. But I think it's a very, very wise plan. So ambulance replacement program on page 34. Our ambulance replacement program is pretty good shape. We replace an ambulance every 3 years. I think when I first started working here like 2.5 years ago, we made the very wise decision of holding on to the 4th ambulance. We operate 3 frontline ambulances, and that 4th ambulance or spare ambulance becomes incredibly important. If one goes down mechanically for routine maintenance, the 4th ambulance, holding on to that was a very smart play. Unfortunately, we lost a motor in that ambulance. We're trying to scramble from that a little bit. But if you look at our department's call volume and our needs, holding on to the 4th ambulance is very, very important. like everyone else has spoken to this evening, very expensive. Our newest ambulance that we picked up 2 years ago, I think that came through the door complete for under $300. And this, you're looking at, this is a real price of a $452. Part of that price, about $80,000 of that price, is actually power cot and electric cot. And the electric cot goes in the ambulance, has to call a power load. So it's a platform that sits on the floor of the ambulance. It picks up the cot and mechanically lifts the cot. That's an incredibly important feature. And again, it's about $80,000, and we embedded it into this price. Looking through all of our grants and our needs, this year's AFG grant, we believe, is pretty committed to at this point. Is going to be all durable medical equipment, and a big part of that is those stretchers and cots. They can be interchanged amongst ambulances, so buying them now and putting them in the ambulance and get rid of is not a problem. And that's really important to us, because when you have the primary ambulance at a central, who's on their 12th call today, they'll probably go home in the morning on their 15th call, lifting up 15 people and putting them in the back of the ambulance, you're asking for a back injury, and the investment of that money becomes very important. So our first blush is to put that money into the ambulance and buy them together as a package. I'm confident, looking at this year's Assistance to Firefighter grant and the no vote for that, medical equipment is a priority. And I'm pretty hopeful that we'll pick that equipment up through the grant, and that will be reduced off the price of the ambulances. Any questions on that?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you do with these ambulances? I mean, they have a traded value, or do you sell them to smaller towns, or what happens to them?
Well, I currently have a great ambulance with a questionable motor for sale. I don't know. It's a great question. So we used to, the fourth ambulance, you traded it in, right, or sold it outright, or what have you. There's not a lot of value there, so it was good for us to hold on to it. So generally, when we're done with them, there's not a left to them. But I do appreciate the question, because I was going to make two more points, and I think we don't stress it enough. So whether ambulances, the purchase for ambulances, and also when we talk about durable medical equipment, that's shared amongst our contract towns. So currently, 18% of our ambulance purchases is distributed to the contract towns, and that's also the same for our durable medical equipment. And I think that's a point that isn't really understood well, and it's worth speaking on for a minute. Because when we look at contract town, we look at the money that we receive in, that's a small part of it, but it's helpful that functionally, the city sees a 20% reduction in these large capital purchases, because that becomes distributed amongst the towns. There's a middle option that we're exploring, which I prefer, and I think it is a good option, is that you can re-chassis the ambulances. So standardization is very important to us. So the primary three ambulances, the boxes are the same, the insides are the same, their compartments are the same, and that's really important. So if you're working on a very sick person and you need X piece of equipment, it's right there in each ambulance. So we like the design of the boxes, it's very functional. We're a little different too, because the firefighters put their turnout gear on the ambulances, so they need their compartments a little different than normal. So I think, and we'll explore it with our fleet manager, that re-chassising, meaning the cabin chassis itself is old and tired. You can take the box off of it, clean it up, and put it on a new chassis, and I think that is smart. Generally speaking, it's about 50% or so savings in just re-chassising them, so we're going to look at that as well. But we put a lot of mileage on our ambulances, right, and it absolutely is an expense, right? And as you've spoken about in other formats, doing 911 emergency calls is very expensive, and a huge expense of that is the ambulances. So.
Anything else up here?
Good.
I think that you probably will bring this discussion up sooner or later, but I think we really need to seriously look at ordering the next ambulance before 2025. Because we won't see it for 2 years based on what's going on now. It's a consideration that, it's so different today than it was 2 years ago. Just a point I want to throw out there. We're not doing that tonight, that's for sure.
Appreciate that. And we met with the vendor the other day and talked about that. And I can't remember, Jim, you remember how many months they're out? They're out for
almost 3 years now.
Yeah, it's the reality of it. But that's a good point. It's a very fair point.
Anything else?
I got a few more. Anything else on ambulance? All right, EMS non-disposable, again, just restating the point that these large purchases are shared amongst our contract towns, and right now it's like 20% or so. The EMS non-disposable equipment first appeared in the CIP, I think, 2 years ago. And again, it goes back to some of our fire apparatus where we pick up things on grant and they weren't entered onto the CIP. So we righted that ship, and I apologize, it's on page 39 to 40. So this equipment, our cardiac monitors, our ventilators, all the video scopes, and all the very high-end durable metal equipment that we use to run our paramedic program. That marches out pretty well. We like how it looks and matches out with our replacement cycle for all of our durable medical equipment. And an important part there is the impact on our operational budget. So as these items get older, the maintenance contracts for them get large, and frankly, they're structured that way. And then we're in the position where we spend a lot of money of our operational budget for the maintenance programs. And if you don't pay that, you're facing exposure to having a major break and then getting crushed in your operating budget. So with our current equipment we have now, we work very hard with our vendors and looked at replacement cycles with them and when they're coming out with new models. And we're pretty happy with the way that has laid out. So it's, that came together very well. All right, last three. We'll start with the larger one on the left, right? So that is our Sigtronic Master Box software system. So what that replaces, or the system I should say, is our Master Box system in the city. So all the red boxes that you see on the side of the building, when those alarm, when they send a signal, they're received at the dispatch center. And currently, those are received by a very old analog unit that's called a Vision 21. For about the past 15 years or so, through our assessment for ISO score rating, we've had points detracted on that scoring rubric for not having redundancy in that system. So in other words, that analog Vision 21 system is the only way to receive both our master boxes and radio boxes. And if that fails, we're not receiving any signals. So when we really took a long, deep dive into the alarm system itself, you know, what is the huge problem that we have to fix? Like what truly is an exposure that could cause a lot of damage? And it was the lack of redundancy in that system. And that Vision 21 unit, they don't make them anymore. It broke a little while ago, or I had an issue with it a little while ago, and they're cannibalizing parts from other units. So it really is something we need to fix. So this is a computer-based system. It provides redundancy. It goes right into the dispatch center, and it really takes away that exposure that we have there. So it's very, very important. So about $130,000. It gets the redundant system. There's a monitor at each of the dispatch center stations over there, and there's also be a remote screen in the fire station, so we can receive the signal in there as well. And just a broader comment on the firearm system itself. We've been working with Don Lucier and his group on the downtown project to take a look at how we can improve the firearm system itself. The main part of it that goes down Main Street, it's all underground. It goes through foam boxes. That's very problematic. And the splices are all underground. So we're going to look to work with his team through the downtown renovation project to clean that up, to get those wires out of the foam boxes and get them up into pedestals, which will really reduce our maintenance costs. So, the downtown project becomes very important to us to sort of take a good look at our system and improve it. So the last time we've done a major overhaul on the system was really in the 90s for both the overhead wires and the underground stuff. And we're starting to see failures, especially in the underground components. So the combination, getting this in there and then fixing things for the downtown project is a really important part. Long term for that program, the wired radio boxes, as the city changes or there's other street projects going on, we're evaluating how to reduce some of those mechanical boxes into get them in the radio boxes and slowly over time kind of collapse them down in the system. Because having you have wires that run a long way that serve 3 master boxes, and that's a lot of maintenance for not a lot of benefit. So, and again, the downtown project becomes sort of the springboard to readdress that system and make it work. And I would imagine on that, I'm prepared to answer these questions. The fire department does collect revenue for what we have named as the master box maintenance, right? So in fiscal year 22, we received $84,456. In fiscal year 23, we received $92,000. So each of the master boxes, the owners of those boxes, we charge a $408 annual fee. The city has 225 boxes. 39 of those boxes are radio boxes. So the project to upgrade, substantial improvement in how we receive those, right, is $138,000. And last year, for maintenance fees, we received 92, right? So I think there might be a misunderstanding in the community that radio box maintenance is for each box, right? It's really for the system overall. And the nice thing about the radio boxes is they self-test every day. So if there's ever a problem, we're notified of that. And therefore, it's much easier to manage than the older boxes, which you have to go into every 6 months and do a physical evaluation on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, that's really my poke on it was going to be as we go into the downtown project. If I would love for the answer to be that the cost to replace that main line going down Main Street is the same as replacing the master boxes to make them wireless. I know that's not going to be the answer, but like if we could, do the ROI on just make them go wireless instead of replace that spine, that would be awesome.
I agree. We're going to absolutely do that legwork. We'll look at those numbers. So,
Thank you.
Absolutely agree. And just another comment on the radio box system itself. It's very important, right? So, if your fire alarm goes off, instead of going to a central receiving agency through a phone line, someplace in Iowa, and someone picks up, right? The second your fire alarm goes off through the system, the bell rings at the firehouse. It's the absolute quickest way to get help on your way. So in a city that is, the downtown area is rather compact and small, and the fire department's at the top of it, that saves minutes, and it can be extremely important. But when I first started working here, made an assessment of, where's our vulnerabilities, what kind of, and the radio system came up with. It's really lacked maintenance for a long time, and this is a very important first step in correcting those longer issues. Good. All right, the last two are easy. We're almost done. Right, SBA fill station and the gear drying system. That's replacing items that we have now that are older. And in all honesty, we have done so well with our grants and with the support we've gotten through the CIP. Those are really, that's easy grant stuff. That's boring grant stuff. And I'd imagine before we had to purchase those items, we'd be able to pick them on a grant. So when you look at grant priorities year after year, those are always at the top. So I would be very hopeful that we can take some more pressure off the broader CIP by replacing those through grant work. So.
Questions? Thank you.
Good? All right, thank you.
Thanks to everybody.
Just one follow-up request. I'm going to ask that Don Lucier, if you could send the Finance Committee the most recent presentation on the sidewalk asset management plan to explain a little bit better about how that system is set up and how the sidewalks are chosen, that would be great. That's all.
So, our next meeting is a regular meeting, but there's an event that can people attend. What's the time?
So the February 22nd was yes.
Should we? Court.
It won't be possible for people to be in
Okay.
both places at the same
All right.
time.
Yes.
That's what I was getting at.
Yes.
All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.
So we cancel?